Chapter 651. The Supreme King Meng Tai was righteous, but the Black Biao King did not trust him. If a supremacy were to enter the battlefield with their cultivation sealed, Yixing would be trapped within the restrictive spell formation that enveloped an area of 5 kilometers in radius around him. Moreover, the people outside were blocked by the light barrier and would not be able to help. The Black Biao King could only watch as Yixing was killed by a High Lord. Even if it was not a High Lord who sealed his cultivation and was really a mid-level High Lord, what if he had a forbidden weapon on him? With the Great Yuan Dynasty's foundation, it was hard to say if they had a forbidden weapon that could kill a king, but they definitely had one that could kill a High Lord. If the participants had brought a forbidden weapon that could kill a High Lord, wouldn't Yixing be killed in an instant and not even his bones would be left? At that time, the Great Yuan Dynasty would naturally be despised for violating the agreement. But no matter how much they despised them, Yixing was already dead, and the demon star was gone. The Supreme King of the Great Meng would probably be grinning from ear to ear. Therefore, the Black Biao King had to personally inspect every participant to ensure that no danger could occur. Since the Black Biao King insisted on inspecting, the Supreme King Meng Tai naturally could not refuse. Otherwise, this life and death gamble could not continue. In the end, the two came to an agreement. The Supreme King Meng Tai agreed to the Black Biao King's inspection, but he also had to inspect Yixing. The Black Biao King brought Yixing, and the Supreme King Meng Tai brought Meng Ying. The four of them left the towers and met above the light barrier to inspect each other. In the end, Yixing only kept the blazing profound spear, dark pattern gloves, and black profound bow in an empty storage ring. The rest of the items were given to the Black Biao King. Meng Ying did the same. She only kept the precious weapons and gave the rest to the Supreme King Meng Tai. Then the rank 5 formation masters of both sides opened the formation, and Yixing and Meng Ying entered the battlefield. Whether it was the Dark Star sect, the Great Yuan Dynasty, or the other spectators, their spirits were lifted. This was a battle of life and death. There was no need for anyone to announce the start or end of the battle. As long as the members of both sides entered the battlefield, the battle would begin. It would only end when one side died. Yixing was the legendary demon star of troubled times. He was the chosen one who had seized the star continent's destiny. He was the most monstrous genius in the history of the star continent. On the other hand, Meng Ying was an expert who had made a name for himself in the Grand Yuan Dynasty for many years. His assassination techniques were unpredictable and traceless. He had once succeeded in assassinating a 7th star exalt, causing all mid-level exalts to tremble in fear. Although Yixing was a monstrous genius, he was only a 3-star venerable, and he was still in his growth stage. On the other hand, Meng Ying was already famous for her fighting prowess, and she had already become a 6-star venerable several decades ago. Who would live and who would die in this battle of life and death? Apart from an extremely small number of people who had confidence in Yixing, most of the spectators felt that Yixing was striking a rock with an egg. The reason why geniuses were terrifying was because their future was terrifying, not their present. Many of the spectators were 6-star venerables. They were very wary of Meng Ying, and they even feared her. However, they felt that they were more than capable of defeating Yixing. Even some 5-star venerables felt that Yixing's strength was not comparable to theirs. How could they believe that Yixing was a match for Meng Ying? He actually dared to challenge 10 people. He would probably lose his life in the first battle. This was what most of the spectators thought. When Yixing and Meng Ying entered the battlefield, the entrance to the light barrier was immediately sealed. The space that the two of them could move in was only a radius of 10 miles. The moment Meng Ying entered the battlefield, she immediately disappeared without a trace. As for Yixing, he landed on the peak of a small mountain that was over 100 meters tall with a faint smile on his face. Yixing had already met an opponent who was proficient in the power of darkness. In the Outer Realm Star Continent, the disciples of the Dark Yin Palace that Yixing had met were indeed inferior to Meng Ying in terms of cultivation and strength. However, in terms of the subtlety of their cultivation techniques, they were much better than Meng Ying. After Yixing's superbrain evolved, he could even see the figures of the Dark Yin Palace's disciples, let alone Meng Ying. Meng Ying was hiding in a valley several miles away. He was proficient in the art of assassination. Although he was a 6-star venerable and believed that he could defeat Yixing in a head-on battle, he still used the method that he was most proficient in to kill Yixing. He would first hide and wait for an opportunity to make Yixing wait until he was impatient. Then he would make his move and kill him in one strike. Yixing didn't know how long Meng Ying would wait before he made his move. It could be an hour, or 2 hours, or even several hours. Yixing couldn't be bothered to wait. He looked at the valley several miles away and started to move. Wind energy gathered under his feet as he stepped into the air and headed towards the valley. In the valley, Meng Ying was a little dumbfounded. Why is he coming here? Did he discover me? That's impossible. Even a supremacy can only discover me when he's near me. How can he discover me when he's so far away? He must be looking for me and coincidentally came here. That must be it. It must be a coincidence. Meng Ying thought to himself. He could only accept the fact that Yixing had walked over here by coincidence. However, as Yixing got closer and closer to him, Meng Ying's heart started to beat faster. He couldn't help but suspect. Does he really know where I am? When Yixing was only 50 meters away from Meng Ying, he suddenly accelerated and pounced in a certain direction. Bang! Yixing's figure appeared 100 meters away and smashed a huge rock into pieces with a punch. Meng Ying saw this and relaxed his vigilance. He thought to himself, that's good, that's good. It's really a coincidence. I said he couldn't have discovered me. Before Meng Ying could finish his words, his heart suddenly skipped a beat. A gust of wind enveloped him, giving him a shock. After Yixing smashed the huge rock in the distance, he didn't stop at all. He turned around and rushed to Meng Ying's back and punched him. Meng Ying had just relaxed his vigilance and was completely unprepared. How could he react in time? Yixing's punch landed on his back. Whoosh! Meng Ying's body was instantly sent flying. In the blink of an eye, he flew 1,000 meters away and let out a scream. Given how powerful Yixing's body was, his punch was enough to kill any middle-grade venerable one. Even if Meng Ying was protected by a black-grade inner armor, her internal organs were still injured by the punch. She kept vomiting blood in the air. Whoosh! Yixing circulated the force of wind to the limit and used the 9 heavens astral travel technique. He was as fast as lightning and caught up with Meng Ying's retreating figure. Bang 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 bang. Yixing punched again and again. In the blink of an eye, he had punched Meng Ying 7 or 8 times. Meng Ying's body was sent flying again. His speed increased and he flew a few miles away. His internal organs were all shattered. He fell to the ground without any movement. He was already dead. Chapter 652. In the blink of an eye. From Yixing's first feint attack to shatter the boulder to Meng Ying being killed by Yixing, it was only the time of a snap of a finger. Meng Ying had never imagined that an assassin like him who was proficient in the art of assassination would actually die under Yixing's surprise attack. Meng Ying relied on sneak attacks to assassinate his targets, catching them off guard and catching them off guard. Yixing had launched a surprise attack just now, similarly catching his opponent off guard and catching them off guard. It was a different approach to killing Meng Ying. Outside the array formation's light barrier, the spectating martial artists were completely dumbfounded. The vast majority of them thought that Yixing would die under Meng Ying's hands in the first life and death battle. But the result was poles apart from their expectations. In such a short period of time, the battle had ended. Furthermore, the one who died was Meng Ying. This result caused the martial artists to find it hard to believe. They looked at Meng Ying's corpse in shock, stunned. Ha 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 ha. The Black Biao King laughed loudly. He looked at the Paramount King Meng Tai and said, Meng Tai, keep laughing. Keep laughing. Can you still laugh now? The Paramount King Meng Tai's face was gloomy. Although losing Meng Ying was not a big deal and he did not care, Meng Ying being killed by Yixing in front of everyone's eyes was a loss of face for the Meng royal family. How could the Paramount King Meng Tai still laugh? The Meng royal family's martial artists all had ashen faces. Such an outcome made them very unhappy. As for the other martial artists of the Great Yuan dynasty, although they were not too unhappy because of Meng Ying's death, they still had to pretend to be indignant at this moment. As for the Dark Star Church's martial artists, they were all grinning from ear to ear. Yixing's first victory had greatly boosted their confidence. Meng Ying's forte was his ability to assassinate in the dark, catching people off guard. Without this, he was just an ordinary 6-star venerable. However, Yixing was able to discover Meng Ying's location, which perfectly countered Meng Ying's forte. Furthermore, Yixing pretended to see wrongly, causing Meng Ying to let his guard down. Then, he launched a sudden attack, catching Meng Ying off guard. That was why Yi Xing killed him so easily. In reality, Yi Xing's strength wasn't very strong among 6-star venerables. It was just that his physical strength was very strong. A king from the Great Yuan dynasty commented on the battle. His voice was not loud, but it spread far and wide. All the martial artists heard his comments and nodded in understanding. Indeed. When Meng Ying saw that Yi Xing had attacked the wrong location, he let out a sigh of relief. However, he didn't expect that Yi Xing would immediately charge at him. Yi Xing is too cunning. First, he walked towards Meng Ying, causing Meng Ying to think that he had been discovered and become nervous. Then, he purposely attacked the wrong location to numb Meng Ying's nerves and make him relax. When he was nervous, he would suddenly let out a sigh of relief. That was when one's guard was at its lowest. Yi Xing seized this opportunity to suddenly attack, catching Meng Ying off guard and killing him with a quick punch. Meng Ying shouldn't have tried to assassinate him. If it was a direct confrontation, Yi Xing might not have been his match. The majority of the martial artists still did not acknowledge Yi Xing's strength. After understanding Yi Xing's strategy in the first battle, they began to discuss spiritedly. Meng Tai, are you mute? Black Biao King saw that Paramount King Meng Tai was not speaking and shouted. Paramount King Meng Tai coldly snorted and said, "He has only won the first battle. Furthermore, he only won by using a sneak attack. What is there to be proud of?" Meng Tai had arranged for Meng Ying to fight in the first battle. He had high hopes for Meng Ying. He wanted Meng Ying to secretly assassinate Yi Xing and obtain a beautiful victory. Didn't Yi Xing want to challenge 10 mid-level supremacies of the Meng clan? Look, he was completely ignorant and arrogant. He didn't know what was good for him. He died in the first battle. However, Meng Tai did not wait for such an outcome. Instead, Meng Ying was killed by Yi Xing's sneak attack. Then, he was mocked by Black Biao King. Black Biao King was very proud. He laughed heartily and said, "In a battle of life and death, being able to kill the opponent is a victory. The lower the price, the more perfect the victory." Yi Xing easily killed Meng Ying and obtained a beautiful victory. Of course I'm proud of myself. Ha! If Yi Xing can kill the first, he can kill the second, the third, all the way to the 10th. Meng Tai, who are you going to send to their deaths? Who was he going to send to their deaths? Black Biao King's words made Meng Tai the Supreme King very unhappy. Killing intent surged in his eyes as he shouted, "Meng Shan, you're up for the second battle. Kill that brat." "Yes, Supreme King." A person walked out of the tower. It was a middle-aged man around 40 years old. He carried a saber on his back. Martial artists usually kept their weapons in their storage rings. When they wanted to take them out, they could take them out at any time. Usually, martial artists who carried sabers or swords on their backs were martial artists who were extremely skilled in saber or sword arts. They had a high degree of integration with their weapons. Furthermore, the martial arts they cultivated were also related to their habits. It was very likely that they carried a saber on their back because the angle of attack was suitable. Yi Xing knew this person. He was called Fast Saber Meng Shan. He was only a 4-star green life. For him to be able to cultivate to the level of a 6-star supremacy was already a fortuitous encounter. His cultivation had reached the limit, and it was impossible for him to progress any further. When his cultivation stopped progressing, Meng Shan poured all his energy into Saber Dao, pursuing the peak of saber speed. That was why he was called Fast Saber Meng Shan. His cultivation was only at the early 6th level of Astral Reaching Realm, a level lower than Meng Ying's. However, in terms of direct confrontation, Meng Ying was a lot weaker than him. Under Meng Shan's swift saber attacks, even a peak 6-star supremacy would find it hard to resist. After Black Biao King's inspection, Meng Shan entered the battlefield. Yi Xing is dead for sure in this battle. Meng Shan's speed is extremely fast. Surprise attacks are useless, and his saber is extremely frightening. I heard that once, when he fought against a late 6th level Astral Reaching Realm supremacy, he only needed one saber attack to kill his opponent. His speed was so fast that his opponent didn't even have time to react. Such a fast saber? Yi Xing is only a 3-star supremacy. How can he resist? Yi Xing's physical strength is very strong, but his speed can't keep up. In front of Meng Shan's saber, he can only take a beating. With Meng Shan's exquisite saber arts, Once Yixing is hit, his head will either be chopped off or his vitals will be attacked. I think at most 3 saber attacks, Yixing will lose his life. Some supremacies were discussing loudly. They all came from the 12 empires of the Middle Sky continent, and were direct subordinates of the Great Yuan dynasty. Naturally, they wanted Yixing to lose his life in this battle. Inside the light barrier, Yixing and Meng Shan stood 1,000 meters apart, facing each other. With their speed, 1,000 meters was nothing more than a blink of an eye. It was no different from being a square meter. As long as they relaxed for a moment, they would suffer a fatal blow. In the first battle, Yixing was less than 100 meters away from Meng Ying. Meng Ying relaxed for a moment, and Yixing seized the opportunity to land a punch. Chapter 653. Quick Blade Meng Shan. Yixing looked at him and said, I heard that your blade is very fast, so fast that you can chop off someone's head without them noticing? Meng Shan's face revealed a trace of arrogance as he said, It's good that you know. I will let you die without any pain. You can go in peace. Yixing smiled and said, You think too highly of yourself. My speed isn't slow either. I don't know if your blade can be faster than mine. Meng Shan's eyes narrowed as he shouted, You'll know if you try. As his voice fell, Meng Shan's figure flashed and rushed towards Yixing like a stream of light. Xiao. In an instant, the treasured blade on Meng Shan's back was unsheathed. A resplendent blade light slashed out horizontally and slashed towards Yixing's neck in a flash. It was an extremely fast blade. Among the spectating martial artists, those below the High Lord level felt a chill on their necks. Meng Shan's blade made them feel extremely threatened and overwhelmed with shock. Yixing faced Meng Shan's blade, but his expression didn't change. His expression was as usual. Meng Shan's movement allowed him to see that Meng Shan's wind momentum had already reached the realm of unity of heaven and man. Moreover, his fusion with his blade was also very high, not far from the realm of unity of man and blade. His extremely high attainments in the way of the blade, coupled with his extremely high comprehension of the wind momentum, caused his blade to be much faster than martial artists of the same level. It was extremely difficult to block. However, to Yixing, this speed was nothing. Yixing's comprehension of the wind momentum and unity of heaven and man had reached the level of a low-level king. He was much stronger than Meng Shan. Moreover, Yixing's 9 heavens godly wander technique was extraordinary. His figure moved and dodged the blade. Slash! Meng Shan shouted loudly and continued to slash out. The blade light was like a maggot to the bone as it slashed towards Yixing. Yixing used the 9 heavens godly wander technique and his figure turned into a rapidly moving shadow, dodging the second blade. Third slash, fourth slash, fifth slash. Yixing easily dodged more than 10 blades in a row. Although Meng Shan's blade was fast, it could not even touch the corner of Yixing's clothes. Outside the light barrier, the spectators were shocked. Even many 6-star venerables wouldn't be able to dodge such a fast saber attack. It was understandable that Yixing could dodge 1 or 2 saber attacks. However, he could easily dodge more than 10 saber attacks in a row. Meng Shan's saber couldn't even touch the corner of Yixing's clothes. Wasn't this too abnormal? Meng Shan was the most shocked. Yixing's speed had exceeded his expectations. Apart from supremacy-level experts, he had never encountered an opponent who could dodge his saber technique so easily. After the 12th strike, Meng Shan stopped. A streak of starlight rushed into the sky from the space between his brows. He was using astrology. It was a superior hurricane astrology. The combination of the hurricane astral form and the power of the wind was a result of 1 + 1 greater than 2. This caused the wind yuan qi around Meng Shan to increase greatly. The wind yuan qi revolved around Meng Shan like a hurricane vortex. Meng Shan pointed his saber at Yixing and shouted, Your speed is indeed very fast, but that's all there is to it. Dai. As soon as the word die was spoken, a saber light flashed. As soon as he finished speaking, the saber had already arrived in front of Yixing. Even a supremacy-level expert could only block this saber with their strength. There was no way to dodge it. With the hurricane astral form increasing its speed, the saber's speed had reached a terrifying level. Yixing's heart tightened. This saber did make him feel threatened. He couldn't dodge it in time. The saber in Meng Shan's hand was a mid-grade profound-grade saber. The saber's speed was so fast that it could even split a profound-grade inner armor. If it hit the body that wasn't protected by the inner armor, it would definitely be split into two. Yi Xing's physical strength was indeed very strong. However, his physical strength alone was not enough to fend off the blow. He would not be able to withstand it. At this critical moment, the astral energy in Yi Xing's body revolved. The dark pattern glove suddenly emitted a bright light as he punched out. Bang! Under the shocked gazes of all the martial artists, Yi Xing's punch accurately hit the saber's body, causing a loud explosion. The dark pattern glove was also a mid-grade profound weapon. It contained the astral energy and was invincible. Naturally, it wasn't afraid of colliding with the mid-grade profound grade saber. However, Meng Shan's saber contained an extremely strong power. Yi Xing hastily blocked it with a punch. Moreover, he didn't use his astral form. Even though his physical strength was strong, Yi Xing was still at a disadvantage in this collision. Whoosh! Yi Xing retreated quickly, and instantly retreated 100 meters away. There were benefits to having a strong physical body. If an ordinary honorable martial artist were to receive such a blow, the vibrating energy would impact their body and they would definitely feel uncomfortable or even injured. However, Yi Xing's face wasn't red and he wasn't out of breath. How is this possible? Meng Shan's saber is so fast. Yi Xing hastily punched out. How could he hit the saber's body? This is unbelievable. Could it be that the speed of Yi Xing's punch is faster than Meng Shan's saber? He doesn't have the wind attribute astral form. How could he be faster than Meng Shan? The martial artists who were watching the battle were all shocked. They couldn't understand how Yi Xing's fist technique could be so fast. It was even faster than Meng Shan's. Even some of the honorable martial artists couldn't see it. It was hard for them to understand. However, the kings from both sides were all very knowledgeable. They could see the mystery behind Yi Xing's punch. One with the weapon master. He has already cultivated a low-grade profound level fist technique to the perfection stage and become a weapon master. Since ancient times, weapon masters below the king realm are extremely rare. It's hard to find one in 1,000 years. Even if there is someone below the king realm who can become a weapon master, they are still honorable martial artists. Yi Xing is only a 3-star honorable. How could he be a weapon master? Although the kings from both sides could see the mystery, they still sucked in a breath of cold air. They were all shocked and shocked. This is impossible. This saber was blocked by Yi Xing. This was beyond Meng Shan's expectations. He shouted, "How could your fist technique block this saber? This is impossible." Whoosh! A beam of starlight shot into the sky and turned into an extremely high-grade flame astral form. Yi Xing had a faint smile on his face. He said, "You haven't even reached one with the saber. How could you understand the mystery behind one with the weapon? Take my fist." One with the weapon? Meng Shan's eyes widened, revealing a look of horror. After he became a 6-star honorable, his cultivation progress was almost 0. He had been bitterly cultivating the saber Dao for decades. His goal was to reach one with the weapon. Although he didn't understand the subtleties of one with the weapon, he knew that one with the weapon was very powerful and terrifying. At this moment, Meng Shan didn't have time to sigh. As soon as Yi Xing finished speaking, he threw out a punch. It was as fast as lightning. Yi Xing's punch seemed ordinary. It didn't have any moves or styles. However, in Meng Shan's eyes, it was incomparably mysterious. It seemed that no matter how he dodged or blocked, he couldn't block this punch. Every move made by a weapon master was impeccable, unpredictable and unfathomable. Chapter 654. Kill. Facing Yi Xing's punch, Meng Shan could not avoid it. He could only use all his strength to defend. Saber light flashed, and Meng Shan blocked Yi Xing's punch by a hair's breadth. Second punch. Yi Xing shouted. The dark pattern glove clashed with the opponent's mid-grade profound grade treasure saber, and then he threw out another punch. This punch was untraceable. It passed through the defense of Meng Shan's treasure saber and went straight for the latter's face. Suddenly, a huge fist came flying towards Meng Shan, causing him to be shocked. The angle and change of Yi Xing's fist had caught Meng Shan off guard. In his haste, he had no time to react. Meng Shan was very decisive. He instantly abandoned his saber and used his palm as a saber. While his body retreated, his two palms cut out horizontally. If Meng Shan retreated directly, His speed would not be faster than Yixing's punch, and he would be hit squarely. However, his retreating body still bought him some time. At this time, he attacked with 2 saber palms and successfully blocked Yixing's second punch. However, Meng Shan's palms collided with Yixing's dark pattern glove. Even though Meng Shan's astral energy was dense and his palms could break steel, he was still injured when he collided with the dark pattern glove. Asterisk crack. Asterisk the sound of bones cracking came from his palms. The skin and flesh on the dark pattern glove cracked and blood gushed out. Third punch. Yixing's voice sounded like a soul-destroying curse as he threw out another punch. This punch did not have any changes. It was upright and straightforward as it blasted forward. However, this punch contained an astonishing power and invincible strength. Meng Shan's palms were injured, and his body was retreating. How could he resist Yixing's third punch? He was blasted in the face. The power of this punch was astonishing. Meng Shan's face was directly dented by this punch. His body was like a stream of light as he was blasted backward. He flew for 1,000 meters before he fell to the ground in an arc. Just like Meng Ying, he did not move after he fell to the ground. He had already lost his life in the process of being blasted away. In the second battle, Yixing won again, and another 6-star venerable of the Meng clan died. Yixing's physical strength alone was enough to contend against a 6-star venerable. Adding on the fact that he could manipulate the astral energies, as a fist master, his strength was unrivaled among 6-star venerables. Even in a head-on battle, Yixing was not afraid of a top-notch 6-star venerable. Moreover, Yixing had almost no weaknesses. He could discover the hidden Meng Ying, and his speed was even faster than Meng Shan's. Meng Ying and Meng Shan were frightening, but both of them were unconventional. Once they lost their strengths, they were actually the most ordinary 6-star venerables. Therefore, when Meng Ying's concealment technique was countered and Meng Shan's speed was countered, they were unable to withstand a single blow from Yixing. It wasn't until now that the warriors who didn't think highly of Yixing at the beginning began to pay attention to Yixing. They finally understood that Yixing's challenge wasn't a suicidal attack, but that Yixing truly had the strength to do so. Ha 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 ha. Meng Tai, I said the second one would die, but you didn't believe me. How about now? The Black Biao King laughed. He was in a very good mood. Although he was the one who had the most confidence in Yixing, he didn't expect that Yixing was actually a fist master. The Black Biao King shouted, Meng Tai, don't send out such repulsive people. Are the experts of your Meng clan unwilling to make a move? Quickly send out the third one to die. Meng Ying and Meng Shan were very powerful in the eyes of ordinary warriors. Few people of the same level could match them. However, in the eyes of the Black Biao King, they were repulsive because their true strength wasn't strong. They were only outstanding in one aspect, which was why they were terrifying. Once their outstanding aspect was countered, their strength was very ordinary. As the great Meng clan's royal family, the Meng clan had countless powerhouses. Of course, it was impossible for them to only have these unconventional warriors. Those powerhouses who were strong in all aspects were not in the minority. The Supreme King Meng Tai's face was incomparably gloomy. Although Meng Ying and Meng Shan's true strength wasn't strong, they weren't easy to deal with either. Warriors of the same level were abnormally afraid of them. In the end, they were called repulsive by the Black Biao King, as if the Supreme King Meng Tai was deliberately sending them to their deaths. The Supreme King Meng Tai coldly snorted and said, Since you want him to die quickly, then this king will fulfill your wish. The third battle, Meng Xianxia, you go. Yes, Supreme King. A black-robed old man walked out from the tower. His voice was very old. Yixing's gaze suddenly focused. Meng Xianxia was one of the 2 strongest 6-star venerables of the Meng clan in the information the Black Biao King gave him. This was an old monster who had lived for over 200 years. When he was 100 years old, Meng Xianxia was already invincible among 6-star venerables. He didn't rely on a certain aspect to sweep through those of the same level, but his true strength. Defense, attack power, speed, martial arts attainments, battle techniques. All of them were outstanding. Compared to 6-star venerables, there was almost no weakness. In a head-on battle, although Meng Shan could defeat many 6-star venerables with his swift saber, even if several Meng Shans joined forces, they still wouldn't be a match for Meng Xianxia. In front of Meng Xianxia, Meng Shan's swift saber was useless. Meng Xianxia, on the other hand, could easily suppress Meng Shan with his powerful strength. In the Black Biao King's estimation, Meng Qianqiu should be the final character. Even if he wasn't the final character, he would only appear in the 8th or 9th battle. At that time, Yi Xing would have fought 7 or 8 battles in a row, and his stamina would be somewhat exhausted. When Meng Qianqiu made his move, the chances of killing Yi Xing would be higher. Right now, it was only the 3rd battle, and Supreme King Meng Tai had already sent out Meng Qianqiu. Clearly, he had seen Yi Xing's strength, and knew that ordinary 6-star venerables couldn't contend against him at all. Sending him out would be suicide. Therefore, he sent Meng Qianqiu ahead of time to end Yi Xing's life. Some of the younger martial artists didn't know much about Meng Qianqiu. However, most of the astral-reaching venerables had heard of Meng Qianqiu's fame. Even though Yi Xing had killed Meng Ying and Meng Shan, his current opponent was Meng Qianqiu. Those who knew of Meng Qianqiu's fame didn't think that Yi Xing could win this battle. Even if they didn't know of Meng Qianqiu's fame, just by looking at the reaction of some martial artists, they knew that this black-robed old man's strength must be extremely frightening. This should be an intense battle. After the Black Biao King carefully inspected Meng Qianqiu entered the battlefield. Yi Xing's eyes locked onto Meng Qianqiu. This black-robed old man had a head full of white hair and beard, and his face was full of wrinkles. It could be seen that he was indeed very old, and was nearing the end of his lifespan. However, Yi Xing could feel a sense of threat from this old man who looked like he had one foot in the grave. This was something he couldn't sense from Meng Ying and Meng Shan. It could be seen that Meng Qianqiu was much stronger than the two of them. While Yi Xing was sizing up Meng Qianqiu was also sizing up Yi Xing. Chapter 655. Meng Qianqiu said slowly, "You're so young, yet you possess such a cultivation base and strength. You're indeed a genius of your generation, a monstrous genius of the ages. You're definitely a threat to my great Yuan dynasty. I don't have much time left. If I can kill such a monstrous genius and contribute to my great Yuan dynasty, I'll have no regrets in this life." Although Yi Xing was vigilant, his expression remained indifferent as he said, "Many people have threatened to kill me, but in the end, I'm still standing here, whereas those who threatened to kill me have already died. Old man, I see that you're on the verge of death and probably won't be able to live for long. Why don't I send you on your way and let you be on your way?" Hee hee. Meng Qianqiu sneered. His gaze was as sharp as a blade as it landed on Yi Xing's body. He said in a sinister voice, "This old one has been away from the world for a long time. Ignorant juniors have all forgotten this old one's reputation. Although this old one has one foot in the grave, my cultivation is still there. Until the day I die, no one below the High Lord is worthy of my attention. That includes you, Yi Xing." Meng Qianqiu seemed to be a little agitated. He coughed a few times and looked even older. He was like a candle in the wind, about to be extinguished at any time. However, none of the spectators really thought of Meng Qianqiu as an old man. Instead, they were full of fear for this old man. He had cultivated for more than 200 years. His cultivation was profound. Even if he had not become a great master, he was far stronger than other 6-star venerables. Although Meng Qianqiu had restrained his aura, the spectators could still feel how powerful and terrifying the aura in his body was. Yi Xing was afraid of Meng Qianqiu because he did not plan to use his dragonification trump card. If Yi Xing used all his trump cards, even a 7-star venerable master would not be worthy of his attention. How could Meng Qianqiu be his opponent? Unexpectedly, Meng Qianqiu looked down on him. Yi Xing also laughed and said coldly, "Meng Qianqiu, your reputation is indeed great, but in front of me, Yi Xing, it is not enough." As soon as the words left his mouth, Yi Xing used his extreme-grade fire constellation and punched towards Meng Qianqiu. As a fist master, Yi Xing's casual punch contained the power of the great Tao of martial arts. It was as powerful as a transcendent state low-class martial arts. Meng Qianqiu's eyes narrowed. The reason he didn't think much of Yi Xing was because Yi Xing was only a 3-star venerate. However, he was still afraid of Yi Xing's fist technique. After all, although he had cultivated for more than 200 years, he had not reached the state of one with a weapon. He was not a weapon master. Whoosh! A beam of starlight soared into the sky. Meng Qianqiu had also used his astrology. It was a high-grade water attribute astrology. Oceanic Soaring Dragon Fist. Meng Qianqiu uttered a roar as he unleashed the force of water, triggering the surging water origin qi. Together with the water-type astral force, his aura was boosted to its limit. Boom! Meng Qianqiu's reaction was extremely fast. He punched out, and the fist aura was like a flood dragon rushing out of the sea. It instantly collided with Yi Xing's fist. Fist against fist, it was a violent collision. Both of their fist techniques were shockingly powerful. When they collided, the airflow exploded. Following that, a terrifying astral shockwave spread out 1,000 meters. Wherever the astral shockwave passed, a layer of the ground would be shaved off. In an instant, dust flew everywhere, and rocks flew into the sky. Meng Qianqiu was indeed much stronger than Meng Shan. Yi Xing's fist was at the peak of perfection. If it was Meng Shan, he would definitely not be able to block it. However, Meng Qianqiu's fist landed squarely on him. Such an intense collision was a competition of strength between the two, to see who was stronger and who was weaker. Yi Xing felt a terrifying power rushing towards him. His body was pushed back uncontrollably. Although Meng Qianqiu was old, the power contained in his body was too terrifying. His astral energy was extremely dense. When the two of them collided, Meng Qianqiu had the upper hand. After Meng Qianqiu gained the upper hand with his first fist, he immediately sent out a second fist. The Azure Sea Soaring Dragon Fist was a mid-grade profound martial realm martial art. He had been practicing it for more than 200 years and was only a step away from major completion. In terms of pure martial art power, it was not much weaker than a low-grade profound martial realm martial art. However, Meng Qianqiu's astral energy was dense and his cultivation was 3 levels higher than Yi Xing's. Naturally, his fist force was stronger than Yi Xing's. If it wasn't for Yi Xing's strong physique, which was also at the level of a 6-star venerable, Yi Xing would have been at a disadvantage in the first fist collision. He would have been sent flying. Soaring dragon controlling water. Meng Qianqiu took a big step forward after gaining momentum with his first punch. He immediately executed his second punch, attacking Yi Xing knowing that his opponent's fist force was strong. Yi Xing naturally avoided a direct collision with Meng Qianqiu. He changed his fist technique, changing from hard to soft, erratic. The sudden change in Yi Xing's fist force was out of Meng Qianqiu's expectation. The second fist was neutralized by Yi Xing. Let's see how many of my moves you can block. Meng Qianqiu shouted and continued to send out the Azure Sea Soaring Dragon Fist. Each fist was faster than the previous one, stronger than the previous one. His fist force accumulated stronger and stronger, emitting a heaven-shaking pressure, ruthlessly pressuring Yi Xing. Although this kind of pressure was invisible, it was as if it was real. Yi Xing felt the air around him slowed down under the pressure of his opponent's aura, like shackles, imprisoning him. Under this kind of pressure, Meng Qianqiu's fist force became stronger and stronger, while Yi Xing's fist force became weaker and weaker. Finally, on the 9th fist, Meng Qianqiu once again captured Yi Xing's attack trajectory and sent out a punch, colliding head-on with Yi Xing. At this time, Meng Qianqiu's fist force was extremely powerful. With a loud explosion, Yi Xing was sent flying 100 meters away, like a flash of light. Even though his physical strength was strong and his defense far surpassed those of the same level, under this kind of impact, he could not help but be injured, blood flowing out from the corner of his mouth. "Kid, you're still too inexperienced, die." Meng Qianqiu did not give Yi Xing a chance to recover. With a loud shout, his figure shot out like an arrow, rushing towards Yi Xing. Boom! It was another earth-shattering punch. Meng Ying and Meng Shan were both killed by Yi Xing's fist techniques while retreating. Meng Qianqiu wanted to give Yi Xing a taste of his own medicine, letting him also be killed by his fist techniques while retreating. Unfortunately, Yi Xing was not Meng Ying, nor was he Meng Shan. As Yi Xing's body was retreating, the profound blaze spear appeared in his hand. Facing Meng Qianqiu's heaven-shaking punch, Yi Xing stabbed out with his spear. Sharp Wind Spear. This spear was extremely fast. After Yi Xing became a spear master, the speed of his spear was even faster. Before Meng Qianqiu's fist could touch Yi Xing's body, the tip of the profound blaze spear had already pointed at Meng Qianqiu's throat. The sudden life and death crisis caused Meng Qianqiu to turn pale. Facing such a spear, Meng Ying and Meng Shan would definitely be killed in an instant. But Meng Qianqiu was ultimately not someone Meng Ying and Meng Shan could compare to. The moment he sensed the danger, Meng Qianqiu immediately stopped his body and quickly retreated. At the same time, He retracted his fist and blocked his throat. Chapter 656. Ding! The tip of the blazing profound spear struck Meng Qianqiu's mid-grade profound weapon glove, causing sparks to fly. A huge force was transmitted from the glove, causing Meng Qianqiu's figure to explosively retreat, instantly retreating a few hundred meters. Yi Xing's retreating speed also increased explosively due to the rebounding force. In the blink of an eye, the two stabilized their bodies. They were already 1,000 meters apart, standing in the air, facing each other from afar. Yi Xing pointed the blazing profound spear at Meng Qianqiu from afar, a faint smile hanging on his lips as he said, "Old man, your reaction speed is also extraordinary. You actually managed to block that spear strike just now. Consider yourself lucky." Meng Qianqiu's eyes revealed a look of shock as he said, "Your spear arts are actually not inferior to your fist arts. How is this possible?" Yi Xing's fist arts had already reached the state of one with the weapon. He was a master of fist arts. If his spear arts were not inferior to his fist arts, wouldn't he also be a master of spear arts? Not only is he a master of fist arts, he is also a master of spear arts. This is simply a miracle that has been created since ancient times. Even a king couldn't help but exclaim out loud, his voice shaking. Weapon master was a general term for all martial artists who had achieved one with the weapon. Usually, a weapon master was only one type of weapon, one with a weapon. Yi Xing was only a 3-star honorable. To be able to achieve one with a weapon, and become a master of fist arts was already unheard of by the experts of the Star Continent. Moreover, he was also a master of spear arts. This was naturally a miracle that had been created since ancient times, and could be said to be unprecedented. The spectating martial artists all sucked in a breath of cold air when they heard this. They looked at Yi Xing with their mouths agape. Such a young age, such a cultivation, and he was actually a master of 2 weapons. This was too shocking. However, after the shock in the hearts of the kings, they didn't agree with Yi Xing's ability to achieve one with the weapon. The fact that Yi Xing was able to use both weapons as one only proved how monstrous his martial arts talent was. However, in the eyes of the king tiers, there was no need for Yi Xing to become a master of spear arts if he was already a master of fist arts. On the road of martial arts, quality is more important than quantity. No matter what type of weapon a grandmaster is, as long as they firmly walk down this road of martial arts, then they will have the hope of comprehending a martial intent. If 2 weapons become one, then they will be affected by each other, and the difficulty of comprehending a martial intent will be greatly increased. Yi Xing is only a 3-star venerable, and yet he is able to become a dual-weapon grandmaster. If he were to concentrate on comprehending a single martial arts path, then it's likely that he would have comprehended a martial intent before he reached the king realm. But he cultivates 2 martial arts. Although his fist and spear techniques complement each other in battle, in terms of comprehending martial arts, they both drag each other down. Wanting to comprehend a martial intent is extremely difficult. Many thoughts flashed through the minds of the kings. The king tiers of the Dark Star religion felt pity for Yi Xing, while the king tiers of the Great Yuan dynasty rejoiced in his misfortune. If they knew that Yi Xing was not only a master of fist arts, master of spear arts, but also a master of archery, who knew what they would think? Yi Xing naturally did not know what the kings were thinking. When he cultivated martial arts, he had only received guidance from Xianxia in the early stages. After that, he cultivated by himself according to martial arts manuals, and the superbrain was his best teacher. With the help of the superbrain, it was easy for him to cultivate any martial arts. He did not find it difficult to cultivate archery, spear, fist, and physical strength at the same time, so he had been cultivating all this time. With the ardent flame profound spear in hand, Yi Xing was full of confidence. His heroic spirit rose as he said, "My spear arts surpass my fist arts. Old man, you can die under my spear arts." Although Meng Qianqiu was only a 6-star venerable, he was born in the great Meng royal family and had very high standards. After the initial shock, Meng Qianqiu regained his composure and sneered, "What's the difference between a master of fist arts and a master of spear arts? You think that by cultivating 2 martial arts, you can double your strength? Heh. Wishful thinking. That thought just now was merely out of this old man's expectations and caught me off guard. Now that this old man knows your background, do you think you still have a way out? Is that so? Then have a taste of my spear arts." Yi Xing shouted, and became one with his spear. He turned into a stream of light and rushed forward. In an instant, the tip of the spear was already in front of Meng Qianqiu. Bang! Meng Qianqiu was already prepared. He raised his hand and punched. The fist energy was very strong and forced the ardent flame profound spear back. Meng Qianqiu laughed. I said, there is no difference between a master of spear arts and a master of fist arts. Your cultivation limits your strength. In front of me, you will die without a doubt. Yixing's aura suddenly exploded. Flames surged out of his body, especially the ardent flame profound spear, which burned brightly. Take this spear of mine before you talk big. Yixing shouted and displayed the most tyrannical and violent spear arts of the 3 moves he comprehended from the Black Tortoise Jade Wall. Tyrannical Flame Spear. This spear stab was like a flaming planet smashing over. There was a long fiery tail behind it. Its power was so strong that it shook the heavens and earth. Flame Star Force, Fire Power, Fire Origin Qi, Fire Astral Energy. All these powers fused together. How terrifying was the power! Together with Yixing's terrifying physical strength, it increased the power of this spear attack. The entire space within the array light barrier suddenly increased in temperature. Meng Qianqiu's expression was shocked as he immediately felt a huge threat. Azure Sea Dragon Tide. Meng Qianqiu roared and displayed the strongest move of the Azure Sea Soaring Dragon Fist. He could feel that Yixing's spear attack was extremely powerful. Therefore, he also displayed his strongest attack. The moment the punch was unleashed, the sea roared furiously, and the sound of crashing waves could be heard. Dragon-shaped energy fists shot up into the sky and collided with Yixing's spear of tyrannical fire. Boom 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 in the blink of an eye. There were continuous explosions. The tyrannical flame spear's power was too tyrannical and violent. When the dragon-shaped fist auras collided, they collapsed layer by layer. In the blink of an eye, they all turned into flowing stars. As for the ardent flame profound spear, it was still burning with flames. It contained a terrifying power and collided with Meng Qianqiu's fist. Meng Qianqiu suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His body was suddenly pushed back a few hundred meters. His gasps could be heard. The spectating warriors could not believe that Yixing actually sent Meng Qianqiu flying in a head-on collision. Meng Qianqiu's fist aura was also very terrifying. Even though the tyrannical flame spear had dispersed all the fist auras, there was still a strong fist aura that came from the ardent flame profound spear. It caused Yixing's attack to be stopped and he was pushed back a dozen steps. Yixing quickly stabilized his body. Taking advantage of the fact that Meng Qianqiu was still pushed back by the spear aura, he displayed an extremely fast spear attack and attacked again. Sharp Wind Spear. The speed of this spear was too fast. When Yixing stabbed out, he was a few hundred meters away from Meng Qianqiu. In the blink of an eye, the spear tip had already pierced Meng Qianqiu's throat. This was an extremely fast attack that did not give Meng Qianqiu any time to react. Chapter 657. Yixing's spear thrust out at the perfect time. Meng Qianqiu's reaction was the slowest as he was pushed back. Facing Yixing's sharp wind spear, he could neither dodge nor block it. Just as the ardent flame profound spear was about to pierce Meng Qianqiu, a terrifying energy suddenly burst out from Meng Qianqiu's body. Boom! A powerful energy burst out, stopping Yixing's spear momentum. Meng Qianqiu's energy burst out as he ignited his astral stars, causing his strength to multiply. Igniting the astral stars was extremely harmful to the body as it directly affected a martial artist's life source, greatly reducing their lifespan. The lifespan of a supremacy was 300 years. However, it was extremely rare for a supremacy to live to the end of their lifespan. A supremacy would live for over 200 years and would experience some danger and injuries. Once they were injured, it would affect their life source. Even if the injuries were treated afterwards, the damage to their life source would be irreversible. Hence, depending on the damage to their life source, most supremacies could only live for around 270 years. Those with lesser damage to their life source could live up to 280 years. Those with greater damage to their life source could only live up to 260 years. In fact, it was even possible for venerable ones who were severely injured to the point that their life source was severely damaged to the point that they could only live for little more than 200 years before dying of old age. Meng Qianqiu had already lived for more than 260 years. He did not have much lifespan left, only about a dozen years or so. Compared to a venerable one who was in his prime, a dozen years or so of lifespan was nothing. This was a battle of life and death. The outcome would be either you die or I die. Hence, when Meng Qianqiu was in danger, he did not hesitate to ignite his astral stars. He gave up the remaining dozen years of his lifespan and risked his life to kill Yi Xing. Meng Qianqiu's strength had already exceeded the limit of a 6-star supremacy. Now that he ignited his astral stars, his strength multiplied and became even more terrifying. The energy that burst out blocked the ardent flame profound spear, allowing Meng Qianqiu to punch out and hit the ardent flame profound spear. Yi Xing immediately felt a terrifying energy rush towards him. His body was instantly sent flying as he retreated backwards. Meng Qianqiu's face is pale, making him look even older. However, his expression is very crazy. His face is filled with a sinister smile. Seizing the opportunity when Yi Xing retreated explosively, Meng Qianqiu's figure was like a bolt of lightning as he pursued closely and blasted out another punch. The power of the fist was shocking. It contained a terrifying power that was enough to destroy mountains. If this punch landed, even if Yi Xing's body was strong and he had the protection of the profound grade inner armor, he would still be severely injured. Die of old age! Meng Qianqiu roared. Even if he were to die of old age tomorrow, as long as he could kill Yi Xing and remove a huge threat for the great Meng imperial family, he would die without regrets. All the spectating martial artists held their breaths. Meng Qianqiu's punch was too fast. Yi Xing had no way of dodging and could only rely on his strength to resist. In the face of such a terrifying punch, the possibility of Yi Xing blocking it was minuscule. And the result of not being able to block it was clear to everyone: that was death. Facing Meng Qianqiu's terrifying punch, Yi Xing's heart tightened. He knew very well that even if he used the tyrannical flame spear, he would not be able to block the power of this punch. In an instant, Yi Xing had a countermeasure in his heart. He activated the dark force and in an instant, the profound blazing flame spear was condensed by the dark yuan qi and turned into a pitch-black spear. Even in the face of such a terrifying attack, Yi Xing did not transform into his dragon form. Instead, he used the 1,000 transformation spear. The profound blazing flame spear swung out and formed a pitch-black vortex that enveloped Meng Qianqiu's punch. At the same time, Yi Xing also used the wind force and activated the 9 heavens astral travel technique to the limit. The wind yuan qi gathered around his body and he rapidly retreated. The power of this punch was too terrifying. Even the 1,000 transformation spear could not dissolve that terrifying punch. The dark vortex collapsed layer by layer. However, the effect of this move was obvious. It slowed down the pressure of the punch. In addition, Yi Xing's rapid retreat gave Yi Xing more space to block. 1,000 transformations spear. 1,000 transformations spear. Yi Xing continuously used this move. The profound blazing flame spear swung out continuously, forming one dark vortex after another. As one dark whirlpool collapsed, another dark whirlpool appeared, gradually dissolving the opponent's fist force. In the blink of an eye, Meng Qianqiu's terrifying punch had completely disappeared. The spectating cultivators widened their eyes. They did not expect Yi Xing to actually block Meng Qianqiu's attack. When Meng Qianqiu ignited his astral energy, the sudden eruption of power was terrifying. Even a 7-star venerable lord would choose to avoid it. However, Yi Xing had withstood it head-on. This puzzled all the martial artists present and shocked them. Tyrannical flame spear, sharp wind spear, 1,000 transformation spear. Yi Xing had comprehended 3 spear techniques from the black tortoise jade wall. They had different characteristics but each had their own uses. For example, when Yi Xing faced his opponent's explosive power and used his strongest move, he could use 1,000 transformation spear to dissolve it. The effect was very good. Meng Qianqiu's punch missed. One could imagine the shock in his heart. That punch just now had consumed too much of his strength. He could not continuously punch out and continue to suppress Yi Xing. However, Yi Xing took advantage of the instant when Meng Qianqiu's punch had exhausted its strength and did not have time to gather new strength. He stabbed out with his spear and counterattacked. Sharp wind spear. This was an extremely fast spear. With a flash of light, the spear tip stabbed towards Meng Qianqiu's throat. Meng Qianqiu was currently igniting his astral energy, and his strength was terrifying. If Yi Xing used tyrannical flame spear, although it was stronger, its speed would be slower. As long as Meng Qianqiu could catch his breath, he could easily block the tyrannical flame spear and counterattack Yi Xing. However, Yi Xing's sharp wind spear was too fast. It was so fast that before Meng Qianqiu could catch his breath, the spear tip was already in front of his throat. Meng Qianqiu's current strength was much stronger than normal. However, his reaction speed did not increase. Instead, because the strength in his body exceeded his body's limit, his reaction speed became slower. Therefore, Yi Xing's sharp wind spear was too fast for Meng Qianqiu to react. With a flash of cold light, the spear tip pierced a large hole in Meng Qianqiu's throat. The profound blaze spear was immediately retracted. Yi Xing's figure rapidly retreated like a flash of light. Meng Qianqiu, who was stabbed in the throat, completely exploded the strength in his body. Since he was stabbed in the throat, he would definitely die in such a state. Therefore, Meng Qianqiu only had one thought, and that was to drag Yi Xing down with him. Unfortunately, Yi Xing's spear came quickly and retreated quickly. Meng Qianqiu's violent attack did not manage to hit Yi Xing's body. Fresh blood surged out from Meng Qianqiu's throat. The violent strength of the ignited astral energy in his body suddenly found an outlet and rushed towards his throat. Meng Qianqiu could not suppress it even if he wanted to. In just a few breaths of time, Meng Qianqiu's throat spewed out flames. The flames instantly spread throughout his body, turning him into a flaming man. Chapter 658. The power of the astral star turned into flames. Meng Qianqiu was burned to ashes from the inside out. The third battle ended with Meng Qianqiu's death and Yi Xing's victory. The spectating cultivators looked at Yi Xing's figure standing in the air with shock in their eyes. Before the battle, most of the spectators thought that Yi Xing's challenge was suicidal. But now, no one doubted Yi Xing's strength. Even Meng Qianqiu had died at Yi Xing's hands. Moreover, he was killed by Yi Xing when he was burning his astral star. How many mid-level supremacies of the great Meng royal family could contend against Yi Xing? Even Meng Zhongshan, who was as famous as Meng Qianqiu, would most likely lose to Yi Xing. From Meng Qianqiu's death, it could be seen that Yi Xing had an 80 to 90% chance of winning this life-and-death battle. The great Meng royal family's only chance of winning was if Yi Xing exhausted too much of his energy and became weak. However, Yi Xing did not show any signs of exhaustion. Who could be sure that Yi Xing's energy could not last 10 battles? Yi Xing's victory was in his hands. The experts of the Dark Star sect were all very happy. The Black Biao King was also completely relieved. As for the great Yuan dynasty's cultivators, they were all frowning with gloomy expressions. Especially the Meng family's king, they were even more depressed. The honorables from all the empires and forces in the Star Continent had come to watch the life-and-death gambling duel. Under the watchful eyes of so many people, if the 10 middle-level honorables of the damning royal family were all killed by Yi Xing, it would be a complete loss of face and a great loss of prestige. The great Meng royal family could not afford to lose face like this. A Meng family's king said angrily, "This kid's strength has actually reached such a level. Even Meng Qianqiu is no match for him. Then, do we still have to continue the following battles?" What he meant was that they might as well not fight the remaining 7 battles. Although losing 3 battles was embarrassing, it was still different from losing 10 battles in a row. We can't let the Dark Star sect increase their prestige. In my opinion, we should lock down the formation and trap Yi Xing inside. If the Dark Star sect comes to rescue him, we can take the opportunity to destroy them. Another Meng family's king said. His eyes revealed a strong fighting spirit. The great Yuan dynasty in name had unified the Star Continent, but in reality it was not. Because of the existence of the Dark Star sect. To the other cultivators of the great Yuan dynasty, the Dark Star sect was powerful. If they could avoid fighting with them, they would avoid fighting with them. However, to the great Meng imperial family, the Dark Star sect was a thorn in their side. If they had the chance to get rid of them, they would naturally have some ideas. Of course, the Dark Star sect's strength was not something the great Yuan dynasty could easily destroy. This king's suggestion did not receive any response from the other kings. On the other side, the Black Biao King's complacent laughter rang out. "Meng Tai, even Meng Qianqiu is not Yi Xing's opponent. Your Meng family will definitely lose this life-and-death gambling match. Since we agreed on 10 battles, for the next 7 battles, either you admit defeat to Yi Xing now, or continue sending people to their deaths." The Supreme King Meng Tai immediately responded, The fourth battle, Meng Qing. Asking the Supreme King Meng Tai to admit defeat to Yixing? That was impossible. Even if he sent another 7 six-star venerables to their deaths, the Supreme King Meng Tai would not admit defeat to Yixing. Yes, Supreme King. A middle-aged man around 40 years old walked out of the tower. Meng Qing's strength was first-rate among 6-star venerables. However, compared to Meng Qianxia, there was still a big gap. Asking him to fight Yixing was obviously a death match. However, Meng Qing had no other choice. If he dared to disobey the Supreme King Meng Tai's order, he would immediately be smashed into meat paste. Even if he died in the battle with Yixing, he would be sacrificing his life for the great Meng royal family. After being checked by the Black Tiger King, Meng Qing entered the battlefield. The battle was as expected. Meng Qing's strength was not small compared to Yixing's. He was not a match for Yixing. At the beginning of the battle, he was in danger under Yixing's spear. After exchanging a few blows, Meng Qing's aura suddenly erupted. His strength increased explosively. Like Meng Qianxia, he ignited his astral energy. This was a battle of life and death. The result was only death. Since he was going to die, even if Meng Qing was in his prime and still had 100 years of lifespan, he would give up on it. Even if he had to risk his life, he would drag Yixing down with him. However, Meng Qianxia ignited his astral energy and failed to drag Yixing down with him. Naturally, Meng Qing would not be able to fulfill his wish. Meng Qing's outcome was the same as Meng Qianxia's. His throat was pierced by Yixing's spear. The astral energy in his body found a vent and surged out. It turned into raging flames and burned Meng Qing to ashes. In the fourth battle, Meng Qing died. Yixing continued to win. The spectating cultivators sighed with emotion. In the beginning, they thought that Yixing was a suicidal challenge. Now, it was the great Meng royal family's suicidal challenge. Meng Qianxia and Meng Qing ignited their astral energy and fought to the death. If this was not a suicidal challenge, then what was? After Meng Qing's victory, Yixing won the 5th, 6th, and 7th battles. In these 3 battles, the 6-star venerables sent by the Supreme King varied in strength when compared to Meng Qing. However, they were not much weaker. They were not as strong as Meng Qianxia. Although they ignited their astral energy and fought to the death with Yixing, none of them succeeded. Their throats were all pierced by Yixing and burned to ashes. One after another, suicidal battles took place. 6-star venerables were incinerated into ashes one after another. At first, the spectating martial artists were shocked, but later, they became numb to the spectacle. After a few consecutive battles, the spectating cultivators understood that the Supreme King Meng Tai was not purely sending these people to their deaths. Instead, he wanted to exhaust Yixing's energy as much as possible and weaken Yixing's condition. Then in the last battle, the great Meng royal family still had a 6-star venerable, Meng Zhongshan, who was no weaker than Meng Qianxia. At that time, if Yixing's condition was not good and he could not use his full strength, then the great Meng royal family still had hope of winning. After the 7th battle ended, all the spectating cultivators looked towards the great Yuan dynasty's tower. They knew that the Supreme King Meng Tai would not give Yixing any time to rest. He would immediately send out the 8th battle. As expected, the Supreme King Meng Tai's voice immediately sounded from the top of the tower. The 8th battle, Meng Zhongshan. When the Supreme King Meng Tai's voice fell into the spectating cultivators' ears, they were all stunned. What was going on? Shouldn't Meng Zhongshan be the finale and be sent out for the 10th battle? Although Yixing had fought 7 battles in a row, he did not show any obvious signs of fatigue. If Yixing fought 9 battles in a row before sending Meng Zhongshan out, wouldn't the chances of victory be higher? But now, it was only the 8th battle, and the Supreme King Meng Tai had sent Meng Zhongshan out. This caused the spectating cultivators to feel puzzled and unable to understand. If Meng Zhongshan lost the 8th battle, then who in the great Meng royal family would be able to turn the tide in the 9th and 10th battles? Chapter 659. Black Biao King was shocked to see Meng Tai send out Meng Zhongshan for the 8th round. Black Biao King did not think that Meng Tai would be stupid. Since he arranged Meng Zhongshan for the 8th round, he must have his reasons. If Meng Zhongshan was sent out for the 8th round, it was reasonable. There could only be one reason. That was, Meng Tai could send out stronger mid-level supremacies for the 9th and 10th round. Black Biao King frowned. According to the information collected by the Dark Star sect, Meng Qianqiu and Meng Zhongshan were the two strongest mid-level supremacies in the Great Meng royal family. If the Great Meng royal family had stronger mid-level supremacies than Meng Qianqiu and Meng Zhongshan, it was a serious mistake in the information. At the same time, it also meant that even if Yi Xing defeated Meng Zhongshan, he might not be able to win the life and death gambit. He would have to face stronger opponents later on. If Meng Zhongshan was the strongest opponent, Yi Xing's chances of winning would be as high as 80 to 90%. But now, who dared to say that Yi Xing would win the life and death gambit? The result of the life and death gambit was shrouded in a layer of fog, making it hard for people to see clearly. This made Black Biao King's heart, which had already calmed down, to be in suspense again. How much stronger would the 9th and 10th fighters be compared to Meng Zhongshan? Would they have the strength of a 7-star supremacy? This could only be guessed. Everything was unknown. Meng Zhongshan walked out of the tower. He was over 2 meters tall, like an iron tower. The muscles on his body were like dragons, filled with explosive power. His arms were thicker than a normal person's thigh, filled with power. It was hard to imagine how strong his physical body was. Paramount King, Zhongshan swears to complete the mission. Meng Zhongshan bowed slightly in front of Paramount King Meng Tai and said. Paramount King Meng Tai nodded and waved his hand for Meng Zhongshan to go forward. After Black Biao King's inspection, Meng Zhongshan entered the battlefield. Yi Xing's eyes narrowed. This Meng Zhongshan was harder to deal with than Meng Qianqiu. Meng Zhongshan had a famous nickname, Killing Machine. He was a pure fleshly body martial artist. In terms of attack power, he was on par with Meng Qianqiu. But in terms of defense, Meng Qianqiu could not compare. If any 7-star supremacy had to choose between Meng Zhongshan and Meng Zhongqiu, they would not choose Meng Zhongshan. A pure physical martial artist's defense was too strong. Even if they were stronger, it would be difficult to win. The Supreme King Meng Tai had sent out Meng Zhongshan in the 8th battle. Yi Xing knew that there would be even more powerful opponents in the future. It was just that the Dark Star Sect's intelligence report didn't mention this opponent. Clearly, it was a hidden force belonging to the Great Meng imperial family. He was even stronger than Meng Zhongshan, and his battle prowess was at least comparable to an ordinary 7-star supremacy. That was a truly powerful enemy. Therefore, Yi Xing knew very well what Meng Zhongshan's goal was in sending out the 8th battle. It was to exhaust his energy. Since Meng Qianqiu had died by Yi Xing's hand after burning his astral energy, and Yi Xing was not in a weakened state, the possibility of Meng Zhongshan killing Yi Xing was not high. It was only possible that he wanted to exhaust Yi Xing's energy so that Yi Xing would be in a weakened state. That way, the experts in the future would be able to kill Yi Xing. Kid, you can beat Meng Qianqiu, but you can't do anything to me, Meng Zhongshan. Bring it on. Meng Zhongshan shouted as a layer of golden light appeared on his body, revealing a surging aura. Golden Dipper Battle Chi was Meng Zhongshan's fleshly body cultivation technique. It absorbed the metal-attributed star system to strengthen the body, making it as tough as steel. Circulating the Golden Dipper Battle Chi, Meng Zhongshan's body was as tough as a profound weapon. Facing Meng Zhongshan's provocation, Yi Xing looked at him with a faint smile. He did not intend to take the initiative to attack. Meng Zhongshan's specialty was his strong defense. If he defended with all his strength, Yi Xing would have a hard time even if he used all his strength. Meng Zhongshan's goal was to exhaust Yi Xing's energy. Of course, he wanted to defend with all his strength and let Yi Xing take the initiative to attack. Yi Xing saw through his plan and would not fall for it. In the first 7 battles, other than the first and second battles that were easy to win, the venerables from the Meng clan had burned their astral energy to fight Yi Xing. Yi Xing was more or less exhausted, so he would not take the initiative to attack Meng Zhongshan and waste his energy. Yi Xing looked at Meng Zhongshan from afar. If Meng Zhongshan did not take the initiative to attack, he would not move and take the opportunity to recover his energy. Meng Zhongshan saw that Yi Xing was not moving and shouted angrily, "Kid, you don't dare to fight with me?" Yi Xing smiled faintly and said, "Who says I don't dare? Don't worry, let me rest for a while and then I will take your life." Meng Zhongshan would not give Yi Xing time to rest. If Yi Xing did not take the initiative to attack, he would have to give up on defending and take the initiative to attack Yi Xing. Humph. I am known as the killing machine. If you don't take the initiative to attack, I will still crush you. Meng Zhongshan shouted, and the golden light on his body shone brightly. He stomped his feet on the ground and the ground cracked. Instantly, a circle of shockwaves spread out in all directions. Whoosh! Meng Zhongshan's body flashed across the void and appeared in front of Yi Xing. He slapped his palm over. The speed of the palm was so fast that Yi Xing did not have time to use the Overlord Flame Spear art. He just casually thrust his spear forward. Bang! Meng Zhongshan's attack power was not inferior to Meng Qianqiu's. When the golden palm slapped on the blazing flame spear, Yi Xing immediately felt a terrifying shock and his body was suddenly sent flying. Die for me! Meng Zhongshan roared and a golden light flashed. His body was like an iron tower as he slammed down with another palm. Yi Xing had seen Meng Zhongshan's speed and was prepared. He used the 9 Heavens astral travel technique and retreated quickly. He then used the 1000 transformation spear to dissolve the power of the fist. Overlord Flame Spear. The blazing flame spear instantly turned from black to red flames. Yi Xing's spear art had changed to perfection. He took advantage of the moment when the opponent's palm was dissolved and immediately launched a violent counterattack. Meng Zhongshan slapped again and the golden palm collided with the blazing flame spear. Boom! The power of the Overlord Flame Spear was terrifying. Coupled with Yi Xing's physical strength, the spear sent Meng Zhongshan flying. Sharp Wind Spear. Yi Xing's body did not move forward. The blazing flame spear was condensed by the wind Yuan Qi as he unleashed the fastest spear. The spear tip instantly pierced towards Meng Zhongshan. Meng Qianqiu faced such an attack and his life was in danger. However, Meng Zhongshan's defense was much stronger than Meng Qianqiu's. The golden light on the surface of Meng Zhongshan's body shone brightly and formed a bright golden light layer. The blazing flame spear pierced the golden light layer and gave off a metallic sound. Although the golden light layer was penetrated, the spear force was obviously stopped. At this moment, Meng Zhongshan had already slapped his palm out and sent the blazing flame spear flying. His body was unharmed. Although the spear force pierced Meng Zhongshan's body after the golden light layer was penetrated, it was not considered a wound to his body. Chapter 660. Meng Zhongshan's palm technique was wide open, straightforward, and extremely fast. The palm energy shook off the blazing flame profound spear and immediately moved forward, slamming towards Yi Xing's chest. 9 Heavens astral travel technique. Wind elemental energy gathered around Yi Xing as Yi Xing pushed his speed to the limit, dodging Meng Zhongshan's palm energy. Boom! 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 Meng Zhongshan's body moved as fast as a phantom, slamming down one palm after another. Every palm strike caused the void to explode, and wherever the palm energy passed, the mountains would crumble. If they were ordinary intermediate venerable ones, even if there was a group of them, they would be easily crushed to death if Meng Zhongshan got close to them. Tyrannical Flame Spear. Yi Xing once again unleashed this tyrannical and violent technique, forcing Meng Zhongshan to retreat. However, Meng Zhongshan was prepared for this, and even the might of the tyrannical flame spear could not injure him. Come again. Meng Zhongshan became more and more courageous as he fought. After being pushed back by the tyrannical flame spear, he charged forward again in the blink of an eye. Golden palm prints with terrifying power slammed towards Yi Xing. Whoosh! A ray of starlight shot out from Yi Xing's forehead, turning into a huge dark vortex. Yi Xing used the dark astrology, and in an instant, Meng Zhongshan fell into a world of darkness. Although Yi Xing might not necessarily lose to Meng Zhongshan if he fought him head-on, he might face stronger opponents in the next 2 battles. Yi Xing did not want to fight Meng Zhongshan like this. Yi Xing had to conserve his energy for the 9th and 10th battle, so he used the black hole astrology. Meng Zhongshan fell into the world of darkness, and could not see Yi Xing's figure, so his violent attacks stopped. Although Meng Zhongshan had a high-grade metal element celestial phase above him, emitting a golden light, but in the dark world, it could not illuminate too far, causing Meng Zhongshan to become blind. Meng Zhongshan simply closed his eyes. Yi Xing's black hole astrology could make the target enter the dark world. This was no secret. Meng Zhongshan had already trained to fight with his eyes closed. Meng Zhongshan's ears perked up, and he carefully listened to the sounds around him. His pores opened up, and he felt the flow of the air to determine Yi Xing's position. Sharp Wind Spear. When Meng Zhongshan fell into the world of darkness, Yixing immediately launched a counterattack, thrusting out his spear with extreme speed. After all, fighting with one's eyes was not as sensitive as watching with one's eyes. With the speed of the sharp-winged spear, even if Meng Zhongshan could see with his eyes, it would be difficult for him to block it. Now that he was in the dark world, he could not react in time and was stabbed directly. Ding! The spear tip pierced the golden light outside Meng Zhong's body, producing a metallic sound. Boom! Just as the spear was blocked, Meng Zhongshan struck out with his palm. Yixing retracted the blazing profound spear in his hand, and instantly retreated, dodging the opponent's attack. In an instant, he changed his direction and used the sharp-winged spear again, thrusting out rapidly. The spectators were not affected by the black hole astrology, and could see the battle within the light shield. They could only see Yixing's figure moving around Meng Zhongshan in all directions, thrusting out spear after spear, and every spear accurately piercing Meng Zhongshan's body. However, Meng Zhongshan relied on his strong defense to block Yixing's spear, and immediately counterattacked with his palm. His reaction speed was extremely fast. For a moment, there were spear shadows, palm shadows, and human shadows. It looked like Yixing's spear was continuously thrusting Meng Zhongshan, as if he had the upper hand. But in reality, they were evenly matched, and no one could do anything to the other. Ding 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 ding. Hearing the continuous crisp sounds, the spectating cultivators all sucked in a breath of cold air. They were truly shocked by Meng Zhongshan's defense. Yixing's attack power was absolutely terrifying, and even a 6-star honorable would find it difficult to block it. However, even after thrusting out spear after spear, Meng Zhongshan was still unharmed. If Meng Zhongshan had been an ordinary 6-star venerable, no matter how he attacked, he would not have been able to harm Meng Zhongshan. Boy, my defense is invincible. You can't do anything to me. Meng Zhongshan closed his eyes, thrusting out his palms continuously, golden light flashing, and his mouth did not stop. Tyrannical fire spear. Yixing laughed, and after a feint, his body shifted, and the spear technique suddenly changed, becoming the most violent and overbearing technique. Meng Zhongshan heard the sound and immediately thrusted out his palm, but he did not expect that Yixing was only feinting, and was shocked. At this moment, a terrifying aura came from behind. Yixing's tyrannical flame spear had arrived. The spear technique changed too quickly, and by the time Meng Zhongshan regained his senses, the ardent flame spear had already stabbed into his back. Bang! The tyrannical flame spear's power was much more terrifying than the sharp wind spear, and with a loud explosion, Meng Zhongshan was sent flying. The golden light layer on his body was instantly shattered, and at the same time, the spear tip pierced a bloody hole in his back. Ah! Meng Zhongshan roared. Little you dare to trick me. Yes, I am, so what? Yixing snorted, his voice came from the darkness, and with just a few words, he changed his position a few times, causing Meng Zhongshan to be unable to determine his position. As a pure physical martial artist, Meng Zhongshan's defense and vitality were far superior to those of the same level. Even if Meng Xianxia was hit by Yixing's spear, he would be severely injured, but to Meng Zhongshan, it was not too serious. Meng Zhongshan circulated his golden dipper battle chi, and immediately stopped the bleeding from his wound, and also stopped the loss of his vitality. Sharp wind spear. Yixing did not give Meng Zhongshan a chance to catch his breath, and with a flash of his spear, he used his fastest spear technique to attack. In the world of darkness, Yixing used speed to fight speed, and Meng Zhongshan could not resist at all, and could only use his strong defense to resist. However, Yixing did not use the sharp wind spear every time, and occasionally he would suddenly change his moves, and use the tyrannical flame spear, which caught Meng Zhongshan off guard. Under Yixing's intentional control, Meng Zhongshan basically could not resist the tyrannical flame spear, and every time he used the tyrannical flame spear, Meng Zhongshan would be sent flying, and a bloody hole would be left on his body. Although Meng Zhongshan's defense was flawless, and Yixing's attacks were on other parts of his body, but after a few bloody holes, Meng Zhongshan's injuries worsened, and it was difficult to stop the bleeding. A person's vitality and vitality were directly related to blood, and the loss of blood meant the loss of vitality, and the loss of vitality. Meng Zhongshan became weaker and weaker, and his defense gradually declined. Finally, when Meng Zhongshan's body was pierced with a 10th bloody hole, he could no longer resist the blazing profound flame spear, and this spear directly pierced through Meng Zhongshan's body, and the spear tip came out from the other side. This spear contained a terrifying power and exploded in his body, and instantly shattered Meng Zhongshan's internal organs, causing a fatal injury. This time, Yi Xing did not retreat, but held the blazing profound flame spear, and fiercely pierced into Meng Zhongshan's body, and Meng Zhongshan could no longer fight back. Chapter 661. In the 8th battle, Meng Zhongshan died, and Yi Xing continued his winning streak. In the light shield of the formation, Yi Xing held his spear and pierced through Meng Zhongshan's body. The scene froze at this moment, and all the spectating cultivators were stunned when they saw this scene. Their eyes were filled with shock and amazement. Meng Qianxia and Meng Zhongshan, the two most famous mid-level supremacies of the great Meng royal family, had both died in Yi Xing's hands. In addition, 6 other powerful 6-star supremacies had also died. This kind of result was something that the martial artists had not expected at all. Some of them did not expect that the Supreme King Meng Tai would send out stronger mid-level supremacies. At this moment, they were certain that Yi Xing would win. They thought that the 9th and 10th battles were a foregone conclusion. However, the Black Biao King's expression became nervous. He knew that one of the Supreme King Meng Tai's trump cards was about to be revealed. Regarding Meng Zhongshan's death, the Supreme King Meng Tai did not even frown. He had already expected this result. The mission he gave Meng Zhongshan was to increase Yi Xing's energy consumption. Yi Xing had used at least 100 moves to kill Meng Zhongshan, so he must have used up a lot of energy. The 9th battle was the real trump card. Even if he did not succeed in the 9th battle, there was still a safer trump card in the 10th battle. Since the Supreme King Meng Tai dared to agree to this life and death battle, he was naturally fully prepared. He would definitely not let the great Meng royal family lose their dignity. As the ruler of the Star Continent, the great Meng royal family had been cultivating secret forces in every era. This was the great Meng royal family's secret. Only a few people knew about it, and even many kings did not know about it. Now, it was finally time for these secret forces to be put to use. The great Yuan dynasty's cultivators looked at the Supreme King Meng Tai. Meng Zhongshan had died, so they did not know who the Supreme King would send out for the 9th battle. The Supreme King Meng Tai's eyes lit up, and he said, "The 9th battle, Meng Zhanfeng, kill this bastard." Meng Zhanfeng? The cultivators of the great Yuan dynasty all knew this person. He was just an ordinary 6-star venerate. The Dark Star sect had investigated all the 6-star venerables of the Daming dynasty, and Meng Zhanfeng was no exception. He was only in his 50s, and he had only become a 6-star venerable within 10 years. He did not have any obvious battle records, and in the information of the Dark Star sect, he was excluded from the possible participants. Aside from a few people who knew the inside story, the vast majority of cultivators thought that the paramount king Yi Xing had already given up on this life and death gamble. Thus, he sent out an ordinary 6-star venerable to settle this matter with Yi Xing. "Yes, your majesty. Your subject will definitely kill this thief." A vigorous voice rang out as a person walked out from the tower. Meng Zhanfeng looked very young, not even 30 years old. The Black Biao King carefully checked and confirmed that Meng Zhanfeng was indeed a mid-level supremacy and not a supremacy or king. He sealed his cultivation and allowed Meng Zhanfeng to enter the light barrier. "So it's you." Yi Xing looked at Meng Zhanfeng. When he had just returned from the extraterritorial Star Continent, he had met this person in the Starry Sky Arena. Unexpectedly, this person's strength was even more terrifying than his aura. He was actually a 6-star venerable who was even stronger than Meng Qianxia and Meng Zhongshan. It seemed that the Daming dynasty had not randomly assigned Meng Zhanfeng to guard the Starry Sky Arena and wait for Yi Xing's news. They had left a true powerhouse behind. Meng Zhanfeng's gaze was cold like a sharp blade as he said, "This is me. I could not attack you in the Starry Sky Arena. Now I can finally fulfill my wish and kill you, this thief, to restore the prestige of my great Yuan dynasty." The spectating cultivators were stunned. Meng Zhanfeng's words were beyond their expectations. From Meng Zhanfeng's tone, it seemed that he was even stronger than Meng Qianxia and Meng Zhongshan. Otherwise, Yi Xing, Meng Qianxia, and Meng Zhongshan would have already died at Yi Xing's hands. How could Meng Zhanfeng be so confident that he could kill Yi Xing? However, Meng Zhanfeng was very ordinary among 6-star venerables, and he was even more unknown to many martial artists. Could he be stronger than Meng Qianxia and Meng Zhongshan, who were invincible among 6-star venerables? Meng Zhanfeng's aura gradually surged as the crowd watched in shock. In the end, the monstrous aura was like an avalanche, causing some 7-star venerables to turn solemn. Although they were separated by the light barrier, they could still feel that Meng Zhanfeng was extraordinary. He was probably stronger than Meng Qianxiu and Meng Zhongshan. Heavens! This Meng Zhanfeng's aura is so strong that it is not inferior to a 7-star venerable. Could it be that his strength is comparable to a 7-star venerable? Some venerables exclaimed. They were shocked that the great Meng imperial family had hidden such a powerful 6-star venerable. It turns out that the Supreme King arranged Meng Zhongshan to fight in the 8th round not because he wanted him to fight in advance, but because there are more powerful middle-level venerables. Meng Zhongshan should be fighting in the 8th round. This Meng Zhanfeng is stronger than Meng Zhongshan, but he is only fighting in the 9th round. Could it be that there is someone stronger than Meng Zhanfeng fighting in the 10th round? Looking at Meng Zhanfeng's aura, his strength should not be inferior to an ordinary 7-star venerable. How strong will the person fighting in the 10th round be? I thought that Yi Xing had won the life and death gambling match after defeating Meng Qianxiu and Meng Zhongshan. Now it seems that I have underestimated the great Meng imperial family. As the ruler of the Daiyuan king, how can the great Meng imperial family only have this much strength? They must have some hidden experts. The difference in strength between a 6-star venerable and a 7-star venerable is too great. If Meng Zhanfeng really has the strength of a 7-star venerable, Yi Xing will be defeated in this round without waiting for the 10th round. The martial artists exclaimed repeatedly. Previously, they had all thought that Yi Xing would win the life and death gambling match. Now, the wind had shifted to the great Meng imperial family's side. Yi Xing looked at Meng Zhanfeng with a calm expression. No matter how strong Meng Zhanfeng was, there was a limit to his strength. Being able to reach the combat strength of a 7-star venerable was already extremely heaven-defying. After all, it was too difficult for the martial artists of the Star Continent to fight across realms in the venerable realm. There were very few people who could fight across realms, and it was even harder to find someone who could fight across realms. Yi Xing did not believe that it would be so coincidental for him to meet a 6-star venerable who could fight across realms. The possibility of this happening was less than 1 in a trillion. Yi Xing said indifferently, "You couldn't do anything to me in the Starry Sky Grand Arena. You can't do anything to me here either. Perhaps you are stronger than Yi Xing, but so what? There is only one result in this life and death gambling match. That is, I, Yi Xing, will live and the 10 middle stage venerables of your great Meng imperial family will all die. You are only the 9th. There is still a 10th after you." Yi Xing's tone was resolute and decisive. He was full of confidence. Chapter 662. Meng Zhanfeng raised his hand and a black class medium treasure saber appeared in his hand. Swoosh, at the same time, a ray of starlight shot into the sky and turned into a golden star. It was a superior metal element star form. With the treasure saber in hand and the metal element star power in his body, Meng Zhanfeng's aura suddenly became sharp. He shouted, "Yi Xing, you don't have to wait for the 10th round. You will die in this round." As soon as he finished speaking, a golden light flashed and a dazzling saber aura broke the air current in half and slashed towards Yi Xing. The saber was faster than Meng Shan and the power contained in the saber aura was much stronger than Meng Shan. It was stronger than Meng Zhongshan and Meng Qianxiu. When an expert made a move, one would know whether they were skilled or not. Meng Zhanfeng's black class media martial skill, Golden Aura Void Splitting Saber, had been cultivated to the Great Completion realm. Its power was not inferior to a transcendent martial skill. Meng Zhanfeng's metal force had also reached the unity of heaven and man realm, which was higher than a 7-star supremacy. Although his cultivation had not reached the level of a 7-star supremacy, the power of his saber was stronger than an ordinary 7-star supremacy. Golden Aura Void Splitting Saber focused on breaking the void. Once the saber aura was released, it would break the void and arrive in an instant. It was as fast as lightning. It was only fast but weak. It was not a threat even if it caught up with Yi Xing. It was only strong but slow. It could not even catch up with Yi Xing's clothes. However, it was fast and strong. It was a big threat to Yi Xing. Meng Zhanfeng's saber was fast and strong. Yi Xing could not avoid it and only had time to block with his spear. Clang! The treasure saber carried a golden saber aura and slashed on the blazing flame spear. Dazzling sparks flew in all directions. Yixing's body was instantly sent flying. There was a sweet taste in his mouth and a mouthful of blood surged up. Meng Zhanfeng's attack power was indeed terrifying. Just one saber was able to injure Yixing a little. Swoosh! The air current split and a golden light flashed. Meng Zhanfeng's second saber had arrived. Yixing used the Nine Heavens spirit travel technique and retreated quickly, but he was still not as fast as the saber light. Myriad Transformations Spear. While retreating, Yixing executed this move. Dark energy gathered on the blazing flame profound spear, drawing out a dark whirlpool. A golden saber light flashed, and the dark vortex was cut in half. The golden saber light that broke through the dark vortex struck Yixing's chest like a hot knife through butter. Bang! Even though Yixing's power was greatly reduced after the black vortex was split open, and he was protected by the mystic-grade inner armor, he still spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying. Yixing felt a sharp pain in his chest. The astral blade was too sharp. Although his inner armor was not cut open and blocked most of the attack power, part of the astral blade still penetrated into his body, causing damage to his body. The golden saber light appeared again. Meng Zhanfeng had already sent out his third saber strike. He laughed and said, "Yixing, how does it feel?" The spectating cultivators watched the battle unfold in the light barrier. Meng Zhanfeng's strength was even more terrifying than they had imagined. If this continued, Yixing would not be able to withstand more than a few saber strikes. Meng Zhanfeng's rapid saber strike after saber strike forced Yixing to retreat continuously. Even though he was in the world of darkness, he could still accurately capture Yixing's movements and accurately determine Yixing's exact location. The Dark Star Sect's cultivators were very nervous. Yixing's situation was very bad. As for the Great Yuan Dynasty's cultivators, they were naturally very excited. In the blink of an eye, Meng Zhanfeng's third saber strike had already arrived in front of Yixing. Under such rapid attacks, Yixing was unable to completely dodge his opponent's attack. He had to retreat quickly. Meng Zhanfeng caught the fluctuations caused by the friction between his body and the air. He was able to lock onto Yixing's position. Yixing already vomited blood from the second saber strike. How could he block the third saber strike? Yixing's actions were out of everyone's expectations. He actually put away the medial grade profound spear in his hand and switched it for a pitch-black profound bow. Although this bow was also a medial grade profound weapon, Meng Zhanfeng's astral blade was already in front of him. What was the use of using a bow? The bow was a long-range weapon. Drawing the bow required a certain amount of time. In close combat, by the time one drew the bow and shot an arrow, the opponent would have already killed one. Furthermore, Yixing was facing Meng Zhanfeng's saber. It was as fast as lightning. How could he block it with a bow? The spectating cultivators were all shocked. They did not understand Yixing's actions. In their opinion, switching from a spear to a bow was simply suicidal. The Dark Star Sect's cultivators all stood up. Yixing's actions were simply courting death. As for the Great Yuan Dynasty's cultivators, they all laughed. They were overjoyed. Others did not know that Yixing was not only a spear master and a fist master, but he was also an archery master. Furthermore, Yixing's archery Dao was even further than the spear Dao and fist Dao. His attainments were deeper. The degree of one with the weapon was even higher than the spear and the gloves. The bow was the weapon Yixing was most familiar with. With a bow in hand, compared to wearing gloves or holding a spear, it felt more comfortable and comfortable to use. Others did not know that Yixing was not only skilled in archery, but he had also comprehended his own archery martial technique. Switching from a spear to a bow was not courting death, nor was it suicidal. With a bow in hand, one's strength was stronger and faster than using a spear. With the dark crow bow in hand, it instantly transformed into a black shadow. It was an afterimage formed by moving at extreme speed. It was also a black vortex. It was extremely similar to the 10,000 transformations spear. When the saber light slashed into the black vortex, it immediately deviated. However, the black vortex was also collapsing. Immediately after, the saber and the dark crow bow collided. The dark crow bow had an extremely strong suction force. It followed the black vortex and immediately deviated the saber to the side. The saber light followed the momentum and slashed down. It flashed past Yixing's side. Although it instantly broke the air current, it did not touch Yixing's body. Meng Zhanfeng was shocked. All the spectating cultivators were shocked. Just now, Yi Xing had used a medium-grade profound spear and was unable to resolve Meng Zhanfeng's saber technique. Now, Yi Xing used a bow and successfully changed the trajectory of Meng Zhanfeng's saber. Bang! At the moment when everyone was shocked, there was a sudden loud sound. Yi Xing had pulled the bowstring. Yi Xing's pulling and releasing was extremely fast. Starlight gathered on the bowstring. Before it condensed into an arrow shape, it formed a fan-shaped ripple and shot out. Without condensing into an arrow shape, it naturally did not have the penetrative power of an arrow. However, this fan-shaped ripple should not be underestimated. The dark crow bow was a top medium-grade profound bow. The force it shot out was enough to threaten a 6-star venerable. The most important thing was that the fan-shaped ripple was too fast. It was impossible to guard against it. It was like a light blade that instantly cut Meng Zhanfeng's neck. Chapter 663. If he waited for the starlight to condense into the shape of an arrow, it would take longer. Although the arrow would be more powerful, it would give Meng Zhanfeng time to prepare. Now, Yi Xing only needed to pull and release the starlight ripples that shot out were too fast. It was impossible to guard against. If Meng Zhanfeng was hit by the starlight ripples without any preparation, his head would probably fall off. Therefore, in an instant, Meng Zhanfeng's heart trembled as he felt the threat of death. Whoosh! Meng Zhanfeng's body suddenly bloomed with golden light as he rapidly retreated. The blooming golden light was Meng Zhanfeng's astral energy and metal attribute star force erupting from his body to form a defensive layer. However, the starlight ripples shot out from the crow mystic bow were really sharp. The golden defensive layer was cut open like water and the starlight ripples continued to cut towards Meng Zhanfeng's neck. Whoosh! Meng Zhanfeng rapidly retreated. Coupled with the defense of his protective shield, he finally won a moment of time to withdraw his treasure saber and slash down. Although the starlight ripples were sharp, they were nothing but air. Under the saber light, they were instantly split in two. The terrifying saber light shot forward and in the blink of an eye, it was above Yi Xing's head. It seemed that Meng Zhanfeng's saber was very domineering. In an instant, he had counterattacked Yi Xing. In fact, the threat of the starlight ripples was still there. After the starlight ripples were split in two, they continued to shoot forward. Under Meng Zhanfeng's horrified gaze, the starlight ripples flashed past his neck. Although there was no pain, Meng Zhanfeng still felt a chill coming from both sides of his neck. Obviously, both sides of his neck had been swept by the starlight ripples. It was only because the starlight ripples swept by too quickly that he didn't feel any pain. Bang! There was a loud explosion. The crow mystic bow in Yi Xing's hand was burning with raging flames. It erupted with a terrifying power and collided with the saber light. Yi Xing's strike was like the tyrannical flame spear of spear arts. Its power was wild and overbearing, and it instantly shattered the saber light. However, the power of Meng Zhanfeng's saber strike was truly terrifying. Yi Xing was forced back. This was exactly what Yi Xing wanted, so he increased his speed and retreated. Only when he was far enough from Meng Zhanfeng would Yi Xing have enough time to draw the bow and display the true power of the black profound bow. Although close-range starlight ripples attacks were hard to guard against, their power was not enough. If Meng Zhanfeng was prepared, it would be very difficult for Yi Xing to injure him with starlight ripples. In the blink of an eye, Yi Xing was already thousands of meters away from Meng Zhanfeng. His aura was restrained, and he merged into the dark world silently. Two streaks of blood appeared on both sides of Meng Zhanfeng's neck. Blood slowly flowed out. At this time, Meng Zhanfeng already felt the pain from his neck. Fortunately, the starlight ripples had only swept past the two sides of his neck, and the deepest part was no more than 2 centimeters. His trachea and aorta were not damaged, so it was not a serious injury. If Meng Zhanfeng had known that the starlight ripples could continue attacking after being cut off, he would not have slashed vertically but horizontally. The starlight ripples were not very powerful. They were destroyed by the saber aura. When Meng Zhanfeng reflected and thought that he would not be at a disadvantage the next time he encountered starlight ripples, he was shocked. He had already lost his sense of Yi Xing. His surroundings were pitch black. Although his metal constellation was blooming with golden light, it was very dim in the dark world. Meng Zhanfeng could not see very far. Previously, Meng Zhanfeng was able to lock onto Yi Xing because under his continuous attacks, Yi Xing was constantly retreating. The trajectory was all within Meng Zhanfeng's expectations. Now, Yi Xing had completely restrained his aura and was hiding. Meng Zhanfeng naturally could not discover him. The array formation's restriction isolated this space. The people outside could see everything inside the array formation's light shield, but they could not interfere. Even sound could not pass in. Therefore, the spectating martial artists could see Yi Xing's figure, but they could not warn Meng Zhanfeng. Meng Zhanfeng channeled his astral energy to stop the blood from flowing out of his neck. He withdrew his saber and got into a defensive posture. He calmed his mind and sensed the surroundings. In order to kill Yi Xing, the intermediate venerable ones who participated in this life-and-death duel were trained to fight with their eyes closed. As long as there was any movement or fluctuation of astral power, Meng Zhanfeng would be able to sense Yi Xing's existence. Yi Xing moved stealthily in the dark world and arrived at the edge. He was about 5 to 6 miles away from Meng Zhanfeng. Yi Xing was not in a hurry to make a move. Instead, he sat cross-legged on a rock and calmed his breathing. Earlier, when he was hit by Meng Zhanfeng's saber and vomited blood, Yi Xing did not have the chance to treat his injuries. He seized the time to circulate his energy and recuperate. If there were healing medicinal pills, such a small injury would be healed instantly. However, medicinal pills were forbidden in life-and-death duels. Yi Xing did not bring any medicinal pills in, so he could only circulate his energy and recuperate. Now, Meng Zhanfeng was in the open while Yi Xing was in the dark. The initiative was in Yi Xing's hands. Whenever Yi Xing wanted to make a move, he would make a move. He could wait calmly, recuperate, and recover his energy. However, Meng Zhanfeng could not calm down. He did not know when Yi Xing would make a move. Hence, he had to be on guard against Yi Xing's attack. He had to be alert and did not dare to relax. Time passed slowly. There was no movement inside the array formation's light shield. The spectating martial artists were bored out of their wits. While Yi Xing was circulating his energy to recuperate, Meng Zhanfeng was doing the same to recover from the injury on his neck. When Meng Zhanfeng saw that Yi Xing had not made a move, he made a move. In the distance, Yi Xing stood up and raised the dark crow bow. He could not wait any longer. Meng Zhanfeng began to arrange the array formation. If he finished arranging the array formation, Yi Xing would lose more than half of his space to move. Moreover, the difficulty of killing Meng Zhanfeng would increase greatly. Yi Xing circulated his astral energy and his physical strength erupted. He pulled the bowstring fiercely. Even if Yi Xing used all his strength, he could only pull the dark crow bow halfway. He could not pull it to a full moon. When the dark crow bow was pulled, it gathered the astral energy and condensed into an arrow of starlight. Meng Zhanfeng immediately felt the fluctuation of astral energy. His figure flashed like a golden light and rushed towards Yi Xing. A pair of profound grade flying wings appeared behind Meng Zhanfeng. A distance of a few miles was just a blink of an eye for him. However, Meng Zhanfeng did not even blink. The arrow of starlight on the dark crow bow had already shot out. The arrow shot by the 7 Transformations Archery Grandmaster had reached the acme of perfection. Its power was terrifying. Meng Zhanfeng stood in place and felt that it was difficult to block. How could he dare to continue rushing forward? Of course, he stopped in an instant and instinctively slashed out with his saber. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Meng Zhanfeng's astral saber missed. The arrow of starlight changed direction in the void. It changed direction several times in an instant. The astral saber in Meng Zhanfeng's hand retracted and changed direction along with the arrow of starlight. Chapter 664. It had to be said that Meng Zhanfeng's reaction was indeed extraordinary. In an instant, he changed 7 times and successfully blocked the arrow with his saber, shattering the starlight arrow. Whoosh, however, before Meng Zhanfeng could take the initiative to attack Yi Xing, Yi Xing shot the second arrow. Meng Zhanfeng was shocked. Just now, the saber in his hand could change 7 times with the starlight arrow. That was completely an extraordinary performance in a life-and-death situation. If he were to do it again, he had no confidence at all. The 7 changes of heart was too difficult to resist, especially in this dark world. He could only defend by feeling. The difficulty was too great. How could he not be shocked? Whoosh! 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 The starlight arrow changed direction 7 times in the blink of an eye. The middle-grade mystic saber in Meng Zhanfeng's hand also changed angle with the direction of the arrow light. In a life-and-death situation, people could always stimulate greater potential. Meng Zhanfeng once again captured the trajectory of the starlight arrow. After the 7th change of angle, the saber in his hand slashed out and successfully hit the starlight arrow again. However, a person's luck was not so good every time. Meng Zhanfeng struck the first starlight arrow head-on, directly shattering the starlight arrow. As for the second starlight arrow, although Meng Zhanfeng also successfully hit it, it was a little crooked. The size of the starlight arrow was only so big. It was a little crooked, but the result was very different. This saber cut off half of the arrow tail, causing the direction of the starlight arrow to change, but it did not completely destroy the starlight arrow. The starlight arrow that changed direction did not hit Meng Zhanfeng's vital point. With a thud, it shot Meng Zhanfeng's shoulder. The penetrating power of the arrow was too strong. Even with the protection of the mystic-level inner armor, it was still shot through. The arrow pierced Meng Zhanfeng's body and a sharp pain came. It's over. Meng Zhanfeng's face instantly turned pale, revealing a look of horror. This arrow had hit his shoulder, so it naturally wouldn't take his life. However, they were in a battle of life and death. He couldn't block Yixing's third arrow. No one could save him in the light shield of the formation. He would die without a doubt. Whoosh, as Meng Zhanfeng expected, Yixing's third arrow immediately shot out. Meng Zhanfeng endured the pain in his shoulder and wanted to block the arrow. However, even before he was injured, it was already difficult for him to keep up with the changes in archery, let alone now. The direction of the starlight arrow changed 7 times in the air. The treasured blade in Meng Zhanfeng's hand followed suit, but it was still a beat slower. Thud! The starlight arrow was transferred to Meng Zhanfeng's back. This arrow was not blocked by the saber art. All the power was there. Not only did it penetrate the defense of the profound rank inner armor, but it also penetrated deeply into Meng Zhanfeng's body, penetrating his heart and his entire body. The arrowhead came out of his chest and was unable to penetrate the Xian grade inner armor. It pushed the inner armor up by more than 2 inches. Meng Zhanfeng lowered his head and looked at the towering part of his chest that was propped up by the arrow. His eyes were filled with horror as fresh blood quickly dyed his body red. Soon, the metal star above Meng Zhanfeng dissipated, and his eyes lost the luster of life. His body fell to the ground and stopped moving. In the 9th round, Meng Zhanfeng died, and Yixing continued to win. The result was once again out of everyone's expectations. Looking at the young man holding the profound rank bow in the array, everyone's eyes were filled with shock. Great! The moment Meng Zhanfeng fell to the ground, the Black Biao King cheered. His hanging heart was finally at ease. Yixing's performance was too outstanding. If he could win the 9th round, then there was hope for him to win the 10th round. The Dark Star Sect's martial artists were overjoyed. As for the Great Yuan Dynasty's martial artists, their faces were ashen, and they looked a little dazed. When Meng Zhanfeng showed his hidden strength, all the Great Yuan Dynasty's martial artists thought that they would definitely win the battle. However, the result was completely out of their expectations. Even someone as strong as Meng Zhanfeng, who was not inferior to an ordinary 7-star supremacy, had died at the hands of Yixing. Aren't bows and arrows long-range weapons? How can he use a bow to fight in close combat? How can there be a martial technique for using a bow to fight? His archery is even stronger than his spear and fist techniques. So, he is not only a spear and fist technique master, but also an archery master? Following the heart's 7 changes attainments in archery. Terrifying, too terrifying. Who would have thought that his most monstrous skill would be his archery? After a short moment of shock, the spectating martial artists exclaimed, their voices full of shock. These voices were extremely ear-piercing in the ears of the Great Yuan Dynasty's martial artists, and their faces turned ashen. Especially the Supreme King Meng Tai, whose face was the most gloomy. Meng Zhanfeng already had the fighting strength of an ordinary 7-star supremacy, but he still could not kill Yixing. Although the candidate for the 10th round was stronger than Meng Zhanfeng, there was no hope of killing Yixing. After all, the Supreme King Meng Tai knew that Yixing still had the Sagittarius constellation as his trump card. Now, Yixing's archery was already so terrifying. If he used the Sagittarius constellation, how strong would his strength be? The Black Biao King looked at the Supreme King Meng Tai from afar and laughed proudly. Meng Tai, it seems like your Meng family's trump card is only… Haha. All of you are just seeking death. There is still the 10th round. Are you going to admit defeat or send another one to die? It was rare for the Supreme King Meng Tai to be defeated, so the Black Biao King was naturally pleased. Humph. The Supreme King Meng Tai was already very unhappy. After being provoked by the Black Biao King, he was even more furious. He snorted coldly and said, "The final round has not yet begun. The outcome of this battle of life and death is hard to say. What are you so proud of now? So what if he wins 9 rounds in a row? If he dies in the 10th round, my great Yuan dynasty will still be the winner." When the Black Biao King heard this, he knew that the Supreme King Meng Tai was also not confident in the 10th round. He was even happier and laughed. "Then send out that person who is seeking death. What are you afraid of now?" Haha. The Supreme King Meng Tai was indeed somewhat hesitant. The person he was supposed to send out for the 10th round was a hidden monstrous genius of the Meng family. He would definitely become a king in the future. If he died in the hands of Yi Xing, it would be a huge loss. However, after being provoked by the Black Biao King, the Supreme King Meng Tai's anger soared to the heavens. He did not consider the probability of victory anymore. He shouted, "Good! This king will let you see the monstrous genius of my Meng family Yuan Ting. Go and take Yi Xing's dog life. Let him die without a burial ground." The last sentence was said with gritted teeth. It could be seen that the Supreme King Meng Tai's killing intent towards Yi Xing had reached a certain degree. As soon as the Supreme King Meng Tai finished speaking, a 17 or 18-year-old young man walked out of the tower. The young man was wearing a tight black robe with dragon patterns embroidered on it. This was a robe that only the core members of the great Meng royal family could wear. It could be seen that the identity of this young man called Meng Yuanting was not simple. Chapter 665. All the martialists turned to look at Meng Yuanting. They all gasped when they saw that Meng Yuanting was already a 6-star venerable at such a young age. Moreover, it could be seen from the names of the Meng Yuanxing, Meng Yuanjin, and the other sons of the Paramount King that Meng Yuanting had the word Yuan in his name, so he should be a figure of the same generation. He was either the son of the Paramount King like Meng Yuanxing and Meng Yuanjin, or the son of the Paramount King's brother. The Paramount King was already more than 600 years old. If his brother wasn't a king, he would have died long ago. Therefore, Meng Yuanting was at least the son of a king. Meng Yuanting stood in front of the Paramount King, Meng Tai, and bowed slightly. "Uncle, don't worry. Yi Xing will definitely die in my hands." "Uncle." Meng Yuanting was obviously the son of the Paramount King, Meng Tai's brother. There were a total of 2 blood-related brothers with the Supreme King Meng Tai. His elder brother was Meng Jin and his younger brother was Meng Tong. Meng Jin was a 1-star king and had already had several children more than 100 years ago. Meng Tong was a 2-star king and only had 1 daughter, who was only 18 years old. Kings had a long lifespan of 1,000 years. It was very easy for them to find women, and they could easily obtain any kind of beauty. However, they were very strict with their life partners who had children with them. They weren't casual at all. The status of a king was too high, and it wasn't easy to find a satisfactory life partner. Most kings only had children after a few hundred years. For example, the Paramount King, Meng Tai, was already more than 600 years old. His oldest child was the Crown Prince, Meng Yuanxing, who was only 50 years old. There weren't many children of a king. Those who placed great emphasis on quality would only have 2 or 3 children, and those who had a little more than 10 children. This was because the higher the age, the higher the chance of inheriting a bloodline talent. Therefore, the first 3 children of a king were generally stronger and had a higher chance of inheriting a king's bloodline talent. From the 4th onwards, the chances of becoming a king were very small. Therefore, it could be determined that Meng Yuanting was the son of Meng Tong, and he was the eldest son. The Black Biao King's gaze landed on a 2-star king beside the Paramount King. "Meng Tong, is this your son?" Meng Tong chuckled and revealed a proud expression. He said proudly, "That's right. He is my son, Meng Yuanting. He is 30 years old this year and is a peak 6-star venerable. He can defeat more than 90% of 7-star venerables. Hey Biao, what do you think of my son? What are the chances of killing Yi Xing?" Meng Yuanting's destiny was even higher than his father's. He was a two-star king, and he would definitely become a two-star king in the future. If he had the opportunity, becoming a three-star king wouldn't be a problem. Meng Tong was naturally quite satisfied with his son, Meng Yuanting. He had such a monstrous son, but he had been secretly training him. Outsiders didn't know about it. It felt like a person who had made a lot of money, but no one knew about it. He had nowhere to show off. Finally, one day the opportunity to show off came. Of course, he smiled like an eggplant, extremely proud. If what Meng Tong said was true, and Meng Yuanting could defeat more than 90% of 7-star venerables, then Meng Yuanting was much stronger than Meng Zhanfeng. Different 7-star venerables had great differences in strength. A peak 7-star venerables couldn't kill ordinary 7-star venerables instantly, but they could easily defeat them in 3 to 5 moves. To be able to defeat more than 90% of 7-star venerables, he naturally had the strength of a peak 7-star venerables. Although Yi Xing had killed Meng Zhanfeng, the result of a battle to the death with a peak 7-star venerables was still hard to predict. Even so, the Black Biao King wouldn't boost the morale of others and diminish his own prestige. The Black Biao King said, "Your son is indeed not bad. He is a rare genius. Unfortunately, his opponent is Yi Xing, the most monstrous son of the stars in the history of Star Continent. Therefore, your son's chances of victory are 0, but his chances of being killed are 100%. Hee hee." Meng Tong sneered and said, "What do you mean the death of the most monstrous son of the stars in the history of Star Continent? A dead man is nothing. Yuanting, today is a crucial battle for your fame. Go and show everyone your strength." "Yes, father." Meng Yuanting nodded and walked to the top of the array light shield. The Black Biao King went forward and carefully inspected it. Suddenly, his face turned cold. He took out a mid-grade profound-grade forbidden weapon from Meng Yuanting's storage ring. Its power was enough to instantly kill a supremacy. Although this forbidden weapon was hidden by an array, the Black Biao King had inspected it very carefully. How could it escape his eyes? The Black Biao King made a grabbing motion with his hand and took out the forbidden artifact. He said, "Meng Tai, didn't we agree that you're not allowed to use forbidden artifacts? Your Meng clan is truly untrustworthy. This forbidden artifact is confiscated." The spectating cultivators were in an uproar. This was a life-and-death battle. All the 2-star forces and above in the Star Continent had sent cultivators to watch. It was indeed a little shameful to use underhanded means in front of so many people. Even the cultivators of the 12 empires of the Middle Sky Continent who supported the Great Yuan dynasty lowered their heads at this moment, too embarrassed to defend themselves. The Supreme King Meng Tai's expression did not change. He said, "It's just an item that was forgotten in the storage ring. Is there anything that you can't find deliberately hidden? My Great Yuan dynasty will not do such a stupid thing. If you like this forbidden weapon, I'll give it to you." He said it with a strong sense of righteousness. However, if he was not in the wrong, why would he give the Black Biao King a forbidden weapon for free? There were not many forbidden weapons that could kill a supremacy. They were very precious. "With or without the forbidden weapon, it will be easy for me to kill Yi Xing," Meng Yuanting said proudly. Meng Yuanting said proudly. He didn't show any weakness just because the forbidden weapon was found. The Black Biao King was afraid that he would be paralyzed by the forbidden weapon found. He continued to check Meng Yuanting. This time, he checked more carefully. After confirming that there was nothing wrong, he let Meng Yuanting in. Black Hole Astrology. As soon as Meng Yuanting entered the light shield of the formation, Yi Xing used the Black Hole Astrology. His murderous intent enveloped Meng Yuanting, instantly causing him to fall into a world of darkness. Meng Yuanting's strength was obviously much stronger than Meng Zhanfeng's. He was a young genius. Yi Xing did not underestimate him at all. He would not let Meng Yuanting gain the upper hand. As soon as he used the Black Hole Astrology, Yi Xing retreated stealthily, distancing himself from Meng Yuanting. Meng Yuanting, who had fallen into a world of darkness, suddenly shot out a bolt of lightning from between his eyebrows. It turned into a huge lightning star in the sky. It was an extremely high-level lightning star. Lightning flashed and dispelled the darkness, illuminating the surroundings as if it was daytime. Within a radius of 1,000 meters, it was no different from daytime. Even if the light within 1,000 meters was a little dim, it was still visible. Ha ha ha. Meng Yuanting laughed with a proud expression. His figure flashed as he chased after Yixing. He struck out with his palm, and a thunderous explosion sounded. With a flash of lightning, he struck at Yixing. Yixing, your advantage is not worth mentioning in front of me, Meng Yuanting. You will die without a doubt if I, Meng Yuanting, attack. After I realized that I did not ask for monthly votes, writing is getting more and more boring, and the number of updates is decreasing. Sigh. Readers, do you think this book can still be saved? Do you want to fight for monthly votes so that the number of updates will increase? Chapter 666. Apart from the light element, the one that had the greatest impact on the black hole was the lightning element. Meng Yuanting not only had a lightning element, but it was also an extreme one. This was beyond Yixing's expectations. The dark world of the black hole wasn't affected by Meng Yuanting at all. Therefore, Meng Yuanting's palm accurately hit Yixing. When Meng Yuanting was a 5-star supremacy, he'd already comprehended the power of lightning to the unity of heaven and man. Now, his comprehension was even more profound. He wasn't inferior to an 8-star supremacy. In addition, Meng Yuanting's purple lightning palm had been cultivated to greater mastery. Lightning element martial arts were the most violent. Although they had the same martial arts attainment, Meng Yuanting's purple lightning palm was superior to Meng Zhanfeng's Vajra void cleaving blade. Coupled with Meng Yuanting's thunder astral energy, the thunder astral energy of the extreme thunder astral form, and the thunder origin energy gathered from the universe, Meng Yuanting's palm strike was so powerful that most 7-star supremacies couldn't resist it. Boom! Meng Yuanting was too fast. He caught up with Yixing in an instant. With an explosion, purple lightning bloomed from his palm. The power of the purple lightning palm was fully unleashed. Yixing was shocked. The palm exploded in front of the sound of thunder. Just the sound alone made people's hearts tremble instinctively. The palm came so suddenly that Yixing couldn't dodge it in time. He could only face it head-on. The bow in his hand gathered a large amount of dark origin qi. He swung it out instantly, drawing a dark vortex. Yixing had used this move to block Meng Zhanfeng's shocking blade. However, the power of Meng Yuanting's palm was much stronger than Meng Zhanfeng's blade technique. The dark vortex collapsed instantly. Bang! The palm imprint with purple lightning slammed onto the profound bow. With an explosive sound, the bow was bent down by the impact. Yixing spat out a mouthful of blood. His body shot backward like a cannonball. The bow in his hand almost flew out. In the blink of an eye, Yixing was blasted back several hundred meters. His body crashed into a mountain, creating a deep crater and cracks all around him. Hiss! The spectating martial artists all sucked in a breath of cold air. After Yixing killed Meng Zhanfeng, everyone had a clear understanding of Yixing's strength. They knew that Yixing was completely capable of fighting a 7-star supremacy head-on. Who would have thought that he wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow from Meng Yuanting? Merely the might of this palm strike was sufficient to prove that Meng Yuanting's strength was absolutely at the top amongst 7-star exalt lords, and it was difficult to find a match for him. Ordinary 7-star exalted lords were no match for such an expert. They could easily defeat him in 3 to 5 moves. Not all martial artists knew that Yixing had the Sagittarius constellation. When they saw Yixing being easily sent flying by Meng Yuanting's palm strike, their hopes for Yixing were immediately extinguished. They believed that Yixing would die without a doubt. Even though Yixing's archery was divine, it had taken a lot of effort for him to kill Meng Zhanfeng. Meng Yuanting's strength was far beyond Meng Zhanfeng's. Even if Yixing shot him from a distance, he couldn't do anything to Meng Yuanting. Moreover, Meng Yuanting's attack speed was extremely fast. Yixing probably wouldn't even have the chance to draw his bow and shoot. Meng Yuanting's palm strike had sent Yixing flying. His body also shook slightly. The rebound force was extremely strong, and it would be difficult to resolve without taking a few steps back. However, Meng Yuanting was proud and arrogant. He didn't want others to know that he would be pushed back by Yixing's power. He immediately circulated his astral energy and rooted himself to the ground like a nail. He forcibly resisted the rebounding force. If Meng Yuanting took a few steps back, not only would it be easier to resolve the rebound force, but it would also take much less time. He didn't retreat at all, and it took 2 full breaths of time for the rebound force to be resolved. Yixing, you're just You don't even have the chance to draw your bow and shoot in front of me. Meng Yuanting. Meng Yuanting shouted and continued to rush toward Yixing like a bolt of lightning. Boom. Lightning flashed as Meng Yuanting used the purple lightning rushing palm. His palm strike was earth-shattering. Whoosh. Just as Meng Yuanting's palm spat out purple lightning and was about to hit the depression in the mountain, a phantom flashed out. Yixing used all his strength to gather the wind elemental energy and unleashed the 9 Heavens astral wander technique to its limit. He managed to escape the attack at the last moment. Boom. The purple lightning rushing thunder palm hit the mountain peak, and the sound shook the sky. The whole mountain cracked and collapsed. This palm strike could have severely injured Yixing and forced Yixing to dragon form. However, because it was a moment too slow, Yixing avoided it. Even if the mountain collapsed, it was useless. If Meng Yuanting had taken advantage of the situation and retreated instead of standing still and forcefully taking the attack, the speed of the palm strike would have been faster. Yixing definitely wouldn't have been able to avoid it. Whoosh! A ray of starlight rushed up from Yixing's forehead and turned into a huge bow using the Sagittarius constellation. At this moment, there was still blood at the corner of Yixing's mouth. He had seen Meng Yuanting's strength, and there was no way he could compete with him without using the Sagittarius constellation. When the Sagittarius constellation appeared, Yixing had already drawn the black crow bow. Starlight gathered, and an arrow quickly took shape. Meng Yuanting was furious when his second palm strike missed. His figure flickered like lightning, and in an instant, he changed direction and pounced on Yixing. I'll take your life with 3 palms. Meng Yuanting shouted, and his strength erupted to the limit. This was the ultimate move of the purple lightning rushing palm, and its power was even greater than the first and second palm strikes. The dazzling lightning bloomed with light that couldn't be looked at directly. Its power was shocking. Many 7-star supremacies watching the battle couldn't help but shrink their necks. The power of this palm strike terrified them. If they faced it head-on, they might be killed by this palm strike. Have a taste of my archery. Yixing shouted as the starlight arrow on the black crow bow took shape. The power of his archery had already reached the level of a 7-star supremacy, and Meng Zhanfeng had died under his arrow. Now, with the power of the Sagittarius constellation, the power of his archery skyrocketed. Even though Meng Yuanting's strength could be considered the strongest among 7-star supremacies, Yixing wasn't afraid at all. Boom! The dazzling purple lightning palm strike and the dazzling starlight arrow were both extremely fast. As soon as the two finished speaking, they had already collided with a deafening explosion. The lightning and starlight exploded like a ball of light, instantly spreading in all directions. In an instant, only a dazzling light was left. Yixing and Meng Yuanting's bodies shook at the same time. They each felt the terrifying power of the other's attack, and their bodies retreated at the same time. In the blink of an eye, both of them retreated nearly 1,000 meters away, gasping for breath at the same time. The two looked at each other from afar. Meng Yuanting's eyes were full of shock, while Yixing's lips curled up slightly. His expression was calm and full of confidence. Chapter 667. Yixing's archery skills were superb and focused on variations. He could change 7 times at will and it was impossible to guard against him. The power of his archery alone was not inferior to Meng Yuanting's strength. Yixing was naturally full of confidence in this battle. He didn't even need to use his dragon form to win. However, Meng Yuanting couldn't believe that Yixing, who had been unable to withstand a single blow from him a moment ago, actually had the strength to face him head-on. Even though Meng Yuanting already knew that Yixing had the Sagittarius constellation astrology, the power of the astrology didn't account for much of Yixing's strength. The reason why Yixing's strength could be compared to a 7-star supremacy was because he was strong in all aspects. In other words, Yixing's strength had been raised to a level that was close to the limit. At this level, it was very difficult to raise one's strength any further. Even if one was stronger in a certain aspect, one's strength wouldn't be able to make much progress. In fact, Meng Yuanting's idea wasn't wrong. However, he had underestimated the power of the Sagittarius constellation astrology. If it was an extreme-grade astrology, Yixing would already have an extreme-grade flame astrology, so its power wouldn't increase much. Even a sacred grade astrology wouldn't be able to increase Yi Xing's strength by much. However, the Sagittarius constellation astrology was a paramount grade astrology. Furthermore, it was a combat-type paramount grade astrology. Even though Yi Xing's strength had exceeded his cultivation by 4 levels and was already extremely abnormal, the Sagittarius constellation astrology still made his strength soar. He went from an ordinary 7-star supremacy to a peak 7-star supremacy. Although the Sagittarius constellation astrology could only increase Yi Xing's strength by a 7-star supremacy, it didn't mean that the Sagittarius constellation astrology wasn't strong. The scope of the increase to Yi Xing's strength was small because Yi Xing's strength had already been raised to an extremely high level due to various reasons. If Yi Xing's basic strength was at the 3rd star supremacy level, then, using the Sagittarius constellation astrology, he could kill a 6-star supremacy in one fell swoop. It wouldn't be difficult to kill an enemy that was 3 levels above him. In the blink of an eye, the two of them collided and were both sent flying backwards. By the time the two of them stabilized their bodies, only the blink of an eye had passed. Yi Xing continued to draw his bow as he retreated. When he stopped, he had already drawn the Wu Xian bow. Starlight arrows gathered and locked onto Meng Yuanting from afar. Meng Yuanting, who was shocked, was full of fear for Yi Xing's arrow. He didn't rush to attack. Instead, he stared coldly at Yi Xing. Lightning slowly bloomed on Meng Yuanting's body. More and more lightning energy gathered on his body, and his power grew stronger. Yi Xing narrowed his eyes. Meng Yuanting was accumulating his strength. If he was allowed to continue accumulating his strength, it would be far more powerful than his usual attack when he erupted. Whoosh! Without any hesitation, Yi Xing shot out the starlight arrow in his hand. The dazzling arrow flew like a meteor and instantly arrived in front of Meng Yuanting. Purple lightning flashed in Meng Yuanting's hand. He slapped out and shattered the starlight arrow. His body swayed slightly. The two of them had collided with each other at high speed. Their feet hadn't touched the ground, and their footing had been unstable. Therefore, both of them had been sent flying by the recoil. Now, Meng Yuanting's legs were rooted to the ground. It was impossible for the power of the arrow to send him flying again. The power of this arrow caused Meng Yuanting's power to pause and even decrease slightly. However, it didn't affect Meng Yuanting's momentum of accumulating strength. Meng Yuanting still didn't rush to counterattack. He kept drawing the lightning energy in the universe. This method of greatly increasing his strength was simply beyond the scope of ordinary martial arts. Meng Yuanting should have used a secret technique. If he fully released the power of this secret technique, he would erupt with the strength of an 8-star supremacy. Yi Xing continued to draw his bow and shoot. Although the arrow was fast, Meng Yuanting was as fast as lightning. No matter how fast the arrow was, he could block it. Therefore, Yi Xing's second arrow changed direction continuously in the void, catching Meng Yuanting off guard. No matter how confident Meng Yuanting was in his accumulated strength, he didn't dare to let the starlight arrow hit him directly. Therefore, it was necessary to block the attack of the starlight arrow. He could block the arrow with a raise of his hand. However, when the arrow kept changing direction, Meng Yuanting was in a difficult position. The arrow of 7 changes of heart could change direction 7 times in the void. This kind of change was irregular. Before the next change of direction, Meng Yuanting could not predict which direction the arrow would come from. With Yi Xing's attainments in archery, once the arrow changed direction, it wouldn't be easy to block it. Meng Yuanting had to focus all his energy on Yi Xing's starlight arrow and defend with all his strength. Bang! As a lightning-attributed warrior, Meng Yuanting was faster than Meng Zhanfeng. He could accurately block the 7 changes arrow. However, Meng Yuanting was fully focused on blocking the arrow of starlight, so it was difficult for him to maintain the secret technique. Normally, he could multitask, but in this state, the arrow of starlight had attracted all his attention. He didn't dare to relax at all. Once he relaxed, he would be shot by the arrow and his life would be in danger. Bang! 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 Yi Xing drew his bow and shot 10 arrows in a row, but they were all blocked by Meng Yuanting. Although the arrows of the 7 changes of heart suppressed Meng Yuanting, it was very difficult to kill him. Seeing that Yi Xing kept shooting starlight arrows, Meng Yuanting simply dispersed his secret technique and focused on blocking the arrow attack. He shouted, "Your arrows can't do anything to me. Let's see how many times you can draw the bow." When you run out of strength, it will be the time for you to die. The Wuxuan Bao was a medium-grade bao. With Yixing's strength, he couldn't even draw the Wuxuan Bao into a full moon. Continuously drawing the bao was indeed very exhausting. Yixing couldn't hold on for too long. However, Yixing did not stop at all as he fired arrow after arrow. It was indeed difficult for him to draw the bao for too long. However, Meng Yuanting was also in danger when blocking the starlight arrow. If he was careless and was hit by the arrow, he would die. Besides, Yixing still had the Divine Dragon's Blood Essence as his trump card. Even if he was exhausted, Yixing could still kill Meng Yuanting by activating the Divine Dragon's Blood Essence in his body and dragonizing his body. Since there were no worries, Yixing shot arrows without any scruples. He didn't have to worry about anything at all. In this state of intense battle, every part of his body was very active. His body's potential was much higher than when he was quietly cultivating. When Yixing shot arrows with all his heart, his fusion with the bow and arrow, and his understanding of archery soared rapidly, far surpassing his usual cultivation. Kill! 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 At this moment, Yixing only had one thought in his mind, and that was to try to kill Meng Yuanting before his body was exhausted. As for dragonizing his body, no one knew about this trump card. He would try not to use it if he could. Please give me a few monthly votes. Please give me some motivation. I want to work hard starting tomorrow. Please stimulate me and try to get 6 votes tomorrow. Chapter 668. Drawing a mid-grade profound bow required a great amount of strength. Drawing the bow once also consumed a lot of physical strength and astral power. Meng Yuanting thought that Yixing would be exhausted after drawing the bow for a dozen or so times. By then, killing Yixing would be a piece of cake. However, Meng Yuanting was wrong. Yixing was still full of energy even after drawing the bow dozens of times. Starlight arrows were shot out one after another, each with astonishing power. This shocked Meng Yuanting. Even a 7-star supremacy would find it difficult to draw a mid-grade profound bow dozens of times. Although Yixing's strength had reached the level of a 7-star supremacy, the strength of his astral energy was far inferior. However, Yixing was still full of energy even after drawing the mid-grade profound bow dozens of times. His physical strength was far greater than a 7-star supremacy's. Of course, Meng Yuanting was shocked. The main reason why Yixing was able to draw the bow so many times was because of his physical body. His dark star mystic body had been cultivated to the small success stage. His pure physical strength was equivalent to a 6-star venerable strength. Coupled with his astral energy, he was naturally not inferior to a 7-star venerables. A 7-star High Lord's physical strength was far inferior to Yixing's. Drawing a bow consumed astral energy, so the number of times he could draw a middle-grade profound bow was limited. But Yixing's physical body was powerful, so he could draw a bow with plenty of astral energy to spare. As long as he didn't run out of energy, he could continue drawing the bow. The 7 transformations of starlight arrows were constantly changing directions. Meng Yuanting was barely able to defend himself under the attack of the arrows. He couldn't counterattack. The power of the arrows was enough to threaten Meng Yuanting's life. Any accident could lead to his death. Meng Yuanting didn't dare to relax. Seeing Yixing continuously draw the bow, Meng Yuanting cried bitterly in his heart. Although he blocked every arrow that Yixing shot, he wasn't confident that he could block every arrow after that. This feeling of lingering on the edge of life and death was very frightening. Asterisk whoosh 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 whoosh. Asterisk Yixing drew the bow again and again. Starlight arrows were shot continuously. Soon, hundreds of arrows were shot. With regards to Yixing's physical strength, the martial artists who were watching the battle outside the light barrier were all astonished. He was only a 3-star venerable, but he was actually able to continuously draw a medium-grade profound bow over 100 times. How strong was his physique? Even 5-star supremacies or 6-star supremacies who specialized in physical strength couldn't draw the bow so many times, let alone a 3-star supremacies. Yixing should be exhausted by now. He's already drawn his bow more than 100 times. Meng Yuanting's mind's mind. Of course Meng will of mind. Of the of yi yi. They didn't know that at this moment, Yi Xing was completely immersed in drawing the bow. Every time he drew the bow and shot out an arrow, Yi Xing would have a profound understanding. His attainments in archery and the degree of the unity of man and weapon were both improving rapidly. He was overjoyed, and the more he drew the bow, the more excited he became. How could he feel exhausted at all? At this moment, Yi Xing even restrained his killing intent. He was wholeheartedly immersed in his comprehension of archery. Every arrow was not shot to kill, but to pursue the pursuit of archery in his heart. This was pure archery. It went straight to the heart. Yi Xing was in a mysterious state. Not thinking. Every time he shot an arrow, he had a deeper understanding and comprehension of archery. At the same time, Meng Yuanting, who had blocked hundreds of starlight arrows in a row, calmed down after the initial anxiety and fear. He realized that every time he blocked the starlight arrow, he would feel as if he was walking on the edge of life and death. Although it was terrifying, it also caused his body's potential to be fully unleashed. As he executed the purple lightning rushing palm, his heart was instantly enlightened. It was extremely mysterious. Meng Yuanting found that in this state of hovering between life and death, his comprehension of martial arts was excellent. If this continued, he would very likely reach the unity of man and weapon with the gloves on his hand and become a grandmaster weaponsmith. Once he became a grandmaster weaponsmith, his martial attainments would immediately soar. His power would multiply, and he would probably erupt with the strength of an 8-star venerable lord. Meng Yuanting was excited. If he could erupt with the strength of an 8-star venerable lord, it would be easy to kill Yi Xing and Meng Yuanting. One continuously shot arrows, while the other used palm techniques to defend. Both of them were in a mysterious state where their comprehension of martial arts was extremely fast. The more they fought, the happier they were. As Meng Yuanting's martial attainments grew higher and higher, it became easier and easier for him to resist the arrow of starlight. On the other hand, if Yi Xing's understanding of archery didn't have a qualitative breakthrough, the attack power of the arrow of starlight didn't increase significantly. Under these circumstances, Meng Yuanting would definitely gain the upper hand. At this time, Meng Yuanting no longer hoped that Yi Xing would be exhausted. Instead, he hoped that Yi Xing could continue shooting arrows and keep him in a life-or-death situation. Only in this state could he hope to become one with a weapon and become a grandmaster weaponsmith. A 6-star venerable weaponsmith. Meng Yuanting was very excited at the thought of it. Master weaponsmiths were extremely rare. Besides Yi Xing, there was no other weaponsmith below master in the Star Continent. And he, Meng Yuanting, would become the second. When Yi Xing killed him again, Meng Yuanting would be the only one. At the thought of this, Meng Yuanting felt extremely comfortable. Even his soul was trembling with joy. This state of extreme comfort allowed Meng Yuanting to achieve twice the result with half the effort, and the speed of his martial Dao comprehension was much faster. Yi Xing did not disappoint Meng Yuanting. Even though he had shot the bow hundreds of times, Yi Xing was still full of energy. He continued shooting starlight arrows one after another. 150 arrows. 200 arrows. When Yi Xing shot 200 arrows in a row, the warriors watching the battle were completely shocked and dumbfounded. Was his body made of iron? Tireless. The warriors were puzzled and shocked. In fact, Yi Xing had used up a lot of energy after shooting the bow 200 times in a row. He was very tired. However, he had been in a state of excitement and wholeheartedly pursued a higher level of archery. He had completely ignored the exhaustion of his body. When Yi Xing shot 200 times in a row, Yi Xing's comprehension of archery finally had a qualitative breakthrough. His mental power improved again, reaching the 8th level. 8th level of mental power. 8 changes of archery. At this moment, Yi Xing's soul was trembling with pleasure. He was in a state of wholeheartedly pursuing pure archery. The feeling of having a breakthrough in archery was too strong. Yi Xing's lips curled up, revealing a proud smile. He drew the bow again. Chapter 669. Whoosh. The starlight arrow, which contained the power of the 8 transformations of heart, shot out. The dazzling arrow of starlight changed its direction in an instant, continuously changing directions in the void. Meng Yuanting didn't know that Yi Xing's arrow was different from the previous 200 arrows. He had a confident smile on his face. Meng Yuanting didn't take the 7 transformations of heart seriously. After the starlight arrow changed direction 7 times, purple lightning flashed in Meng Yuanting's palm, and he slapped the starlight arrow. As his fusion with the gloves increased, his attainment in the purple thunderbolt palm also increased. It was more powerful, and it was easy for him to shatter the starlight arrow. However, whoosh! The arrow, which had changed direction 7 times, didn't shoot directly at Meng Yuanting. Suddenly, it changed direction again and shot at Meng Yuanting from another angle. Boom! The purple thunderbolt palm missed and blasted into the distance, but the starlight arrow flashed by the edge of the palm. How was this possible? Meng Yuanting's confident expression instantly turned into horror. The arrow had changed direction 8 times, which was beyond Meng Yuanting's expectations. Meng Yuanting didn't have time to block the starlight arrow a second time. Thud! The starlight arrow easily penetrated Meng Yuanting's thunderbolt star shield and shot into Meng Yuanting's throat. The starlight arrow pierced through Meng Yuanting's entire neck, and the tip of the arrow came out from the back of his neck. The terrifying power exploded in Meng Yuanting's throat, leaving a thumb-sized bloody hole. Blood spurted out like an arrow. Hiss! All the martial artists watching the battle sucked in a breath of cold air. Yixing and Meng Yuanting, one shooting arrows and the other defending, had already fought for 200 rounds. They were evenly matched, and Meng Yuanting's defense was getting easier and easier. It seemed that he was going to counterattack Yixing. But suddenly, Yixing shot an arrow through Meng Yuanting's throat. How was this possible? This result had never occurred to any of the martial artists present. It had completely exceeded their expectations. Who among them wasn't dumbfounded? Good! The Black Biao King, who had been paying full attention to the battle, shouted excitedly when he saw that Meng Yuanting's throat had been pierced. The battle was over. The Dark Star Sect's experts were shocked, but they were more excited and overjoyed. As for the Dayuan dynasty's warriors, their faces turned pale. They were shocked and in disbelief. The Daryuan dynasty had successively sent out 10 mid-level Exalt Realm experts for this life and death gambit. Amongst them were existences that were invincible in the same realm like Meng Qianqiu and Meng Zhongshan. There was also an existence like Meng Zhanfeng who could contend against a 7-star Exalt Lord. There was even a monstrous genius like Meng Yuanting who was stronger than 90% of 7-star Exalt Lords. However, he was still defeated. Even Meng Yuanting, a peak 7-star supremacy and a king's son, had his throat pierced by Yixing's arrow. How could this great Yuan dynasty martial artist dare to believe everything before his eyes? Yuanting. Meng Yuanting's father, Meng Tong, a 2-star king, suddenly stood up and roared the moment Meng Yuanting was shot. Meng Tong rushed toward Meng Yuanting as fast as lightning, but he was blocked by the formation. Father, save me! Meng Yuanting, who had been shot in the throat, immediately covered his throat. His body turned into a bolt of lightning and rushed toward the tower of the great Yuan dynasty. Meng Yuanting was too fast. He reached the edge of the formation in the blink of an eye. However, the space of the formation was limited by the restriction of the formation. Although Meng Yuanting and his father Meng Tong were only separated by a layer of restriction, it was like a heavenly stream that couldn't be crossed. Whoosh! At this moment, Yixing drew his bow again and shot an arrow. Meng Yuanting ran away in fear. He had lost all ability to resist. The arrow didn't change at all. It went straight into the back of Meng Yuanting's head. The tip of the arrow pierced through the space between Meng Yuanting's eyebrows. Meng Yuanting's frightened eyes were filled with hope. He reached out to grab Meng Tong, who was outside the restriction formation. The arrow of starlight that suddenly shot into his mind instantly destroyed all of Meng Yuanting's consciousness. The light in his eyes disappeared instantly, and his body fell to the ground. Yuanting! Meng Tong let out a shrill roar as he glared at Yixing with eyes as sharp as knives. There was a crazed look in his eyes as he roared, "Little bastard, this king will tear you to pieces and let you die without a burial place, without a burial place." Boom! Boom! A series of explosions rang out. It was Meng Tong attacking Yixing in a frenzy. His palm strikes were blocked by the formation, and the explosions shook the heavens. As a 2-star king, Meng Tong's strength was terrifying. Even a level 5 formation trembled violently under his attacks. Yixing quickly retreated to the side of the Dark Star Sect's tower. The Dark Star Sect's formation had opened an entrance, but the Dayuan dynasty's formation was still closed, not letting Yixing out. The Black Tiger King signaled the other kings of the Dark Star sect with his eyes. They all stood up and prepared for battle. The Black Tiger King looked at the Supreme King Meng Tai and said loudly, "Meng Tai, all the martial artists in the 5 continents of the Star Continent witnessed this life-and-death duel with their own eyes. Yixing won. Meng Tai, don't do anything that will disgrace the Meng family in front of everyone. Let Yixing out." The Supreme King Meng Tai stood up. Meng Yuanting was his nephew, and he would definitely become a king in the future. Meng Yuanting's death had infuriated the Supreme King. The Supreme King Meng Tai shouted, "You're right. This little bastard did win this life-and-death duel. But when did I say that he could leave alive after winning? No matter if he wins or loses this life-and-death duel, he is someone that my Dayuan dynasty must kill. Whoever dares to dance with this little bastard will be my Dayuan dynasty's mortal enemy. The Dayuan dynasty will kill him without mercy." If he could kill Yixing in this life-and-death duel, it would be the best outcome for the Supreme King Meng Tai. However, the Supreme King Meng Tai had already prepared for the worst. If Yixing won this life-and-death duel, he wouldn't let Yixing leave. The 10 mid-level martial supremacies of the great Meng royal family were all defeated by Yixing. They all lost their lives. This had already caused the Dayuan dynasty to lose a lot of face and prestige. At this moment, the Supreme King Meng Tai couldn't care less about face. As long as Yixing was alive, he would have lost his face and prestige for nothing. However, as long as he could kill Yixing, the Dayuan dynasty would still be stable. Their face and prestige would naturally return. Therefore, the Supreme King, Meng Tai, was determined to kill Yixing today. He swore that he would not give up until he killed Yixing. Even if he was under the watchful eyes of all the martial artists from the 5 continents of the Star Continent, he would still disregard his reputation and kill Yixing. Today, Yixing must die. An intense killing intent burst out from the Supreme King Meng Tai's eyes. Chapter 670. Yixing had challenged the 10 mid-level supremacies of the great Meng royal family. In the eyes of the martial artists, this was a weak challenge. In the beginning, the martial artists had viewed this challenge as a suicidal one. Now, Yixing had won this life-and-death battle with great difficulty. However, the paramount king Meng Tai had not let him go. Instead, he had taken the opportunity to trap Yixing in a formation with the intention of killing him. It was indeed sinister and vicious. Although the martial artists all thought so, none of them dared to say it out loud. Although the great Yuan dynasty had lost its prestige today, it was still a colossus. In the martial artists' hearts, there was only a seed that the great Yuan dynasty might fail. However, it was impossible for them to rebel against the great Yuan dynasty immediately. The only one who dared to oppose the great Yuan dynasty was the Dark Star sect. The paramount king Meng Tai had prepared for the worst. Naturally, the Black Biao King had also considered the situation and had a way to deal with it. The Black Biao King gave Elder Ling Daochen a look. Then, he looked at the paramount king Meng Tai and laughed. "Meng Tai, you really made me look down on you today." In life, being enemies because of different standpoints is the fate of the heavens. There is no choice. However, how to conduct oneself depends on one's heart. Someone who is open and aboveboard with a magnanimous heart. Even if he is an enemy, I still admire him. Sinister, vicious and cunning people, regardless of whether they are friends or foes, I deeply despise them. Meng Tai, I originally thought that you were a hero of the present age. Now, it seems that you are just a sinister, vicious and cunning person. The Black Tiger King's voice reverberated in all directions. All the martial artists heard it clearly. This was a huge blow to the paramount king Meng Tai's prestige. Boom! Just as the Black Biao King finished speaking, there was a sudden explosion. This sound was 10 times louder than the sound of Meng Tong attacking the formation. The formation near the Tower of the Dark Star sect suddenly exploded. A monstrous wave of air rose into the sky like a mushroom cloud. The Dark Star sect's level 5 formation master, Ling Daochen, had long since made preparations. He had set up several small-scale formations near the formation. At this moment, Ling Daochen had activated all of these formations. Each formation affected and repelled each other, causing them to explode. The resulting power was shocking, and was even more terrifying than the attack of a 4-star king. On the side, the formation that enveloped Yixing was naturally torn apart by the terrifying explosion. As the qi surged, the Black Biao King charged in and grabbed Yixing. Since the Great Yuan dynasty's formations and restrictions had been destroyed, the Dark Star sect's formations and restrictions would naturally be destroyed as well. Yixing was already like a turtle in a jar. Now that the Dark Star sect had destroyed it, the paramount king Mengtai was furious. Whoosh, a resplendent saber aura flashed out and sliced the void into two. The moment the utmost king Mengtai struck out, he slashed out at Yixing. The Black Biao King punched out, and the Black Fist aura shattered the saber aura. He shouted, "Retreat!" The Dark Star sect's strength was inferior to the Great Yuan dynasty's. If they fought head-on, they would definitely be at a disadvantage. Of course, they would not clash head-on with the Great Yuan dynasty. The utmost king Mengtai grabbed Yixing and retreated quickly. However, the moment the utmost king Mengtai attacked, the king of the Great Yuan dynasty had already charged forward. When the king attacked, the distance of 10 miles was as short as a ruler. His figure moved, and he instantly flew 10 miles across the void. Terrifying attacks were launched one after another. In the distance, the martial artists who were watching the battle flapped their wings and retreated continuously, flying into the distance. Once the battle began, they did not even dare to look at it. They hurriedly fled. Otherwise, a random stream of astral energy would be enough to instantly kill any perfected one. Some of the more powerful astral energies might not even be able to resist venerable ones. The Dark Star sect had already made preparations to retreat. Moreover, the kings who had mobilized this time were not weak. 8 kings joined forces and blocked the opponent's attacks before retreating to their temporary stronghold. Ling Daochen hurriedly activated the teleportation formation. There were about 20 kings on the other side. Even a level 5 formation would not be able to withstand their combined attacks for long. The Black Biao King, Xiaomu King, and the other kings still relied on the formation to fight the opponent and weaken the opponent's attack. Only when the teleportation array was completely activated did everyone abandon their defenses and enter the teleportation array. Soon, the teleportation formation emitted a resplendent light, and a pillar of light shot up into the sky. When the utmost king Mengtai led the kings of the Great Yuan dynasty to break the formation outside the temporary stronghold, the resplendent pillar of light in the teleportation formation had already disappeared. The people of the Dark Star sect had successfully reached another teleportation formation, and the entire temporary stronghold was empty. This was a temporary teleportation formation, and Ling Daochen had already set up a means to destroy it. When the pillar of light disappeared, the teleportation formation directly shattered and could no longer be used. It was impossible to continue chasing through this teleportation formation. Bastard! Damn little bastard! 2-star King Meng Tong crazily attacked the empty temporary stronghold, and some buildings were even flattened to the ground to vent the anger in his heart. The utmost King Meng Tai's face was gloomy, and his eyebrows were tightly knitted. He was extremely depressed. Yixing had escaped back to the Dark Star sect, and the chances of killing Yixing were slim. Putting aside the fact that the utmost King Mengtai did not know where the Dark Star sect was located, even if he did, the headquarters of the Dark Star sect was not like this temporary stronghold. After thousands of years of development, it was unknown how many level 5 formations were protecting it. Even if the utmost King Mengtai led the kings to attack, they might not be able to break through. Today, the great Meng royal family had lost a lot of face, and the paramount King Mengtai's personal prestige had also been greatly damaged. In addition, Yixing, the demon star, had yet to be eliminated. The future of the Great Yuan dynasty was filled with worry, and the paramount King Mengtai was only left with frustration. Dark Star sect, Teleportation Palace. Yixing, the Black Biao King, and the other experts of the Dark Star sect walked out of the teleportation formation. Ha ha ha! The Meng family suffered a great loss today. Awesome, super awesome. Yixing, good job. As expected of a demon star in a chaotic era. From now on, you will grow up in the Dark Star sect. The Dark Star sect will protect you and will not let you be harmed by the Great Yuan dynasty. Today is too awesome. Yixing is the nemesis of the Meng family's martial artists. Haha. Looks like the future of the Great Yuan dynasty will indeed end in Yixing's hands. This life and death gambling match was watched by martial artists from all 5 continents. The result will soon spread throughout the entire star continent. Haha. Meng Tai and the Meng family will be disgraced. Although they were happy before, the experts of the Great Yuan dynasty were eyeing them covetously. Everyone had been suppressing their emotions. Now that they had returned to the Dark Star sect, the experts were completely relaxed. They all laughed heartily, extremely happy. Yixing naturally became the focus of the experts. They all patted Yixing's shoulder and praised Yixing without restraint. Their attitude had undergone a huge change compared to before the battle. Before the life and death gambling match, other than the Black Biao King, the experts of the Dark Star sect did not have much confidence in Yixing. But now, Yixing used facts to prove his strength. Chapter 671. Yixing and Meng Yuanting had fought a great battle. They had shot more than 200 times in a row, which had consumed a lot of stamina. After returning to the Dark Star sect, Yixing didn't have much time to celebrate his victory. Instead, he took a profound grade recovery pill and went into seclusion to adjust his breathing. At the same time, he had to reflect on this battle. During the battle, Yixing could feel that Meng Yuanting had been restless and anxious at the beginning, but later on, he had calmed down. Meng Yuanting's attainment in martial arts had grown higher and higher. Clearly, he was using his arrows to cultivate martial arts. Even so, Yixing didn't stop shooting. Instead, he transformed into a dragon to kill Meng Yuanting. Yixing was very confident in his comprehension ability. Both of them were in a profound state of comprehension. Yixing was confident that he would be the first to make a breakthrough. Therefore, Yixing didn't have any distractions. He wholeheartedly immersed himself in archery, completely ignoring his exhaustion. In the end, Yixing won. His archery was the first to make a breakthrough, reaching the 8 transformations of heart. It immediately disrupted Meng Yuanting's defense, causing the latter to suffer heavy injuries and lose his life. Thinking back on this battle, Yixing had gained a lot. His comprehension of archery had become even more consolidated. After this battle, Yixing finally felt the barrier to the 4th level of astral reaching realm. It seemed that it wouldn't take long for him to break through to the 4th star venerable realm. Breaking through to the 4th star venerable realm was a breakthrough from low-level to mid-level venerable. It was much more difficult than breaking through to the 2nd or 3rd star venerable realm. It probably wouldn't happen in a day or two. He would need a quiet environment to break through slowly. After recovering his stamina, Black Tiger King calculated the time and came to find him. In the courtyard where Yixing lived, there were stone tables and stone chairs beside the pond. Yixing and Black Tiger King sat opposite each other. The Black Tiger King's face was ruddy, and he was in high spirits. Clearly, he was in an extremely good mood. He said, "Brother Yixing, you've completely become famous in this life and death gamble. Haha. I dare say that everyone in the entire Dark Star Church is discussing this battle. There's no one who isn't shocked by your performance." Yixing smiled faintly and said, "It's good that we won this battle, but it's not that big of a deal. Killing the Supreme King Meng Tai and destroying the Great Yuan Empire is the real deal." The Black Biao King chuckled and said, "It's a good thing that you haven't lost your head from victory. However, you're wrong. You've won this battle, so it's definitely a big deal. This is a battle of extraordinary significance." Who would have thought that the Meng family actually had experts like Meng Zhanfeng and Meng Yuanting, who were secretly nurtured? But even if Meng Tai took out one trump card after another, you still won. The influence of this battle is too great. Before long, all the martial artists in the entire star continent will hear about this battle. The Great Yuan Empire's fortune will be completely overturned by this battle. Yixing said, "I don't care about the influence of other parties. As long as the Dark Star Church's experts don't make things difficult for Brother Black Biao, it's fine." The Black Tiger King thumped his chest loudly and said, "Haha, in the past, there were some who didn't believe in the demon star of troubled times. However, Brother Yixing, your performance has already stunned them and thoroughly slapped them in the face. Now, who still doesn't believe that you are the demon star of troubled times? Because this brother of mine recognized you early on, they have praised me to the point of deification. Everyone says that my insight is as sharp as a mirror, haha." Haha. Yixing also laughed. Compared to the Dark Star Church, he was an outsider. Now, it seemed that he could be accepted into the Dark Star Church, and the Black Biao King would no longer be in a difficult situation. Yixing said, "Brother Black Biao, I've sensed the barrier to the 4th level of astral reaching realm. I'll be in seclusion for a period of time and break through to the 4th star before coming out." Joy appeared in the Black Biao King's eyes as he said, "So soon? You're about to break through to the 4th star? Haha, good." Yixing's cultivation had increased much faster than the Black Biao King had expected. Now that he was about to break through again, the Black Biao King was naturally incomparably happy. The Black Biao King's smile disappeared as he said, "Yixing, from your performance in the life and death battle, you seem to be a fist master, spear master, and archery master?" Yixing nodded. The Black Biao King said with a serious expression, "This proves that your martial talent is extremely monstrous, and your comprehension is exceptional. However, you're cultivating 3 weapons at the same time. Man and weapon as one is not good." Yixing said, "I'd like to hear the details." The Black Biao King said, "The cultivation of martial Dao is endless. What's important is quality, not quantity. Man and weapon as one is not the end of martial Dao. Therefore your goal should be higher, and not just man and weapon as one." Yixing nodded, "I know. After man and weapon as one can comprehend martial intent." The Black Biao King said, "Correct. Only by comprehending martial intent can one be truly powerful. As the saying goes, if you comprehend one method, you comprehend 10,000 methods. If your sword Dao is man and weapon as one, then the weapons you use won't be too bad." Therefore, regarding martial Dao cultivation, the most taboo is to advance simultaneously. Rather than 3 martial arts, man and weapon as one, it's better to focus on one. As long as you comprehend martial intent, even if you use other weapons, the power will be more formidable than man and weapon as one. Yixing immediately understood. He said, "Brother Black Biao, what you mean is that as long as I comprehend arrow intent, whether it is a saber, sword, spear, or gloves, the power will surpass man and weapon as one?" The Black Biao King nodded, "Correct. A martial intent is an extremely pure martial intent, without the slightest flaw. You have 3 weapons as man and weapon as one, and your martial Dao is not pure. Under the influence of each other, the difficulty of comprehending a martial intent will multiply. The difficulty of comprehending a martial intent is already extremely high. If the difficulty is doubled, then the chances of you comprehending a martial intent before you reach the king realm are minuscule. However, if you cultivate a single martial Dao, and purely focus on your heart of martial Dao, then I believe that with your perception, it's very likely that you will create a legend in the star continent. Before you reach the king realm, you will comprehend a martial intent. A martial intent represents a martial Dao accomplishment. After you reach the king realm, the degree to which you comprehend a martial intent is extremely important to your martial Dao cultivation. If you are 1 step ahead, then you will always be ahead." Yixing's eyes brightened. He said, "Because it's very easy for me to cultivate martial arts, I also cultivated archery, spear, and fist techniques because I felt that I wouldn't waste any time. But now, it seems that although it hasn't affected my martial Dao cultivation, it has affected the purity of my martial Dao. In my heart, the path of archery is my favorite. Then, from now on I will not focus on archery, and will walk the path of pure archery." The Black Biao King said, "The path of archery is a special martial Dao. Even an ordinary person can use a bow and arrow to kill someone several times stronger than them, and martial artists are even more so. But, the path of archery requires too much skill. It requires an extremely high perception, as well as an innate interest. Otherwise, it will be difficult to achieve anything. Therefore, although the path of archery is strong, there are very few martial artists that cultivate it. There is no problem with your perception, and you also have an interest in archery. It's hard to imagine that if you had comprehended arrow intent before you reach the king realm, then after you reach the king realm, just how powerful would your archery be?" Chapter 672. Yixing was looking forward to how powerful his archery skills would be after he comprehended arrow intent. With Yixing's current archery skills, it was sufficient to take a person's life from 20 to 30 miles away. If he became a king and comprehended arrow intent, wouldn't he be able to take a person's life from over 100 miles away with a single arrow? To a king, a distance of 10 miles might be a short distance, but but 100 miles was still a very far distance. It was difficult to cross in 3 to 5 breaths. At that time, Yixing's archery skills would appear and disappear unpredictably even to a king. Killing a king would be as easy as flipping his hand. Yixing withdrew the longing in his heart and said, "Brother Black Tiger, is the comprehension of the grand momentum of heaven and earth the same as the martial Tao? I also comprehended 3 grand momentum of heaven and earth at the same time." The Black Tiger King shook his head and said, "That's not the case. The martial Tao is comprehending one law, comprehending all laws. Therefore, if one is proficient in one law, they will comprehend all laws. The grand momentum of heaven and earth is different. No matter how high one's comprehension of one grand momentum of heaven and earth is, it will not affect the power of the other grand momentum of heaven and earth. The grand momentum of heaven and earth is related to the power of the universe. If a martial artist only comprehends one grand momentum of heaven and earth, they can only draw upon one kind of heaven and earth origin energy. The universe is composed of various attributes and can only draw upon one kind of heaven and earth origin energy. Once it is countered by someone or the environment, it will be a very big shortcoming. For example, if a cultivator who only comprehended the force of fire faced a cultivator who comprehended the force of water, even if the cultivator who comprehended the force of fire was stronger, he would still be defeated by the cultivator who comprehended the force of water. Another example is that in places like rivers, lakes, seas, and other places with abundant water origin energy, fire attribute martial artists will also be at a disadvantage. Therefore, martial artists will basically comprehend 2 or more grand momentum of heaven and earth. Of course, quality is more important than quantity. It is also applicable to the comprehension of the grand momentum of heaven and earth. A person's energy is limited. Wanting to comprehend all of the grand momentum of heaven and earth is simply impossible. Some martial artists may only comprehend one grand momentum of heaven and earth in order to pursue the extreme. But most martial artists will comprehend 2 grand momentum of heaven and earth. As for some people with heaven-defying comprehension, they will even comprehend 3 grand momentum of heaven and earth. Yixing chuckled and said, "Looks like my comprehension of 3 grand forces of heaven and earth isn't considered much." The Black Tiger King said, "The grand momentum of the heavens and the earth is the comprehension towards the various grand Taos of the heavens and the earth. After the momentum reaches perfection, one will be able to comprehend the true meaning of the Tao. However, Tao intent was a realm that only high-level king realm experts could comprehend easily. Before reaching the level of a high-level king realm expert, it was extremely difficult to comprehend it, and it was impossible to do so in the Star Continent. I've only read about it in the notes of our sect's founder. These are too far away. In the Star Continent, being able to comprehend a kind of worldly grand momentum to perfection is already the limit." The 2 of them conversed for a while before the Black Biao King bid farewell and left. He instructed that no one was allowed to enter Yixing's courtyard and told Yixing to cultivate in seclusion and peace. Yixing returned to his room and sat cross-legged on the couch, calming his mind. After a short while, Yixing's mind calmed down, and his state of mind was tranquil. He took out a stalk of eternity flower and consumed it. Borrowing the medicinal power of the eternity flower, he attacked the barrier of the 4th level of astral reaching realm. Currently, Yixing could only sense the barrier of the 4th level of astral reaching realm. The barrier was still extremely sturdy, and under the impact of the eternity flower's medicinal power, it didn't budge in the slightest. It seemed that wanting to break through the 4th level barrier and become a 4-star venerable wouldn't be an easy task. It would require a lot of time. In martial arts cultivation, the barrier of realms wasn't frightening. What was frightening was that one couldn't even sense the barrier. Even if one wanted to advance, one wouldn't have a goal or direction. No matter how hard one tried, one's cultivation wouldn't make any progress. And once one sensed the barrier of realms, one would have a goal. Next, breaking through was only a matter of time. Yixing consumed the eternity flower and activated the astral energy within his body. Using both methods, he continuously attacked the barrier of the 4th level of astral reaching realm. Time slowly passed. After 2 full days, the barrier finally showed a trace of damage, and a fine crack appeared. With the first crack there would be a second. Before long, this door would be completely knocked open, allowing Yixing to advance another realm on the road of martial arts, becoming a 4-star venerable. A 21-year-old 4-star venerable was absolutely unprecedented in the history of the Star Continent. Yixing's victory in the life and death gambling battle, and his killing of 10 mid-level venerables from Meng family of Dayuan had shaken his reputation in the Dark Star sect. If he were to break through to the 4th-star venerable realm, it would definitely shock all the martial artists, and give rise to a heated discussion. If nothing unexpected happened, the result would definitely be like this. However, on the 3rd day of Yixing's seclusion, Wei Qingxian, who had been in seclusion ever since she broke through to the venerable realm, came out and snatched away Yixing's limelight. Last March, Wei Qingxian returned from the Outer Realm Star Continent. After 2 months of seclusion, she broke through to the venerable realm in May. When she became a venerable, everyone in the Dark Star sect sensed that frightening thunder calamity fluctuation. Afterwards, Wei Qingxian chose to go into seclusion once again. And now, it was already the 10,006th year of Dayuan calendar. In March, Wei Qingxian had been in seclusion for 10 whole months. However, after 10 short months, Wei Qingxian came out with a cultivation base of 4th level astral reaching realm, a mid-level venerable. Wei Qingxian was only 19 years old this year. A 19-year-old 4-star venerable was unprecedented in the Star Continent. This made the experts of the Dark Star sect incomparably shocked. The news of Wei Qingxian coming out of seclusion and breaking through to the 4-star venerable realm swept through the entire Dark Star sect like a gust of wind. A 19-year-old 4-star venerable was even more unbelievable than Yixing defeating 10 mid-level venerables from Dayuan Meng family. In a certain courtyard of the Dark Star sect, Zhuo Yupeng and Shimen Zhu sat opposite each other at a stone table. There were some dishes and wine on the table. The two drank, and from their faces, it was clear that they were not happy. Zhuo Yupeng drank a cup of wine and said, "Who would have thought that the rumor of the demon star in troubled times was actually credible? Why isn't I, Zhuo Yupeng, the demon star in troubled times, but Yixing, that low-born brat?" His tone was filled with jealousy and anger. Shimen Zhu hurriedly poured wine for Zhuo Yupeng and said, "Young leader is a 3-star blue fate, a supreme genius of the Star Continent. Yixing must have encountered some kind of great opportunity to have such battle strength. But fate is different. His martial path is limited. Young leader, you don't have to worry. Yixing comes from a lowly background. No matter how high his fate is, it's hard to say if he can become a king in the future. But young leader is destined to become a 3-star king. He might even become the only 4-star king in the Star Continent. If you ask me, the one who killed the utmost being of Daming and destroyed the Dayuan dynasty must be young leader. At that time, young leader will unify the world and establish a new dynasty, becoming the supreme king of the Star Continent. How glorious would that be? If Yixing destroys the Dayuan dynasty, then everything will be in chaos. Who will be the new supreme king then? Could it be Yixing? Pooey! What would you become then, young leader? Are we all going to be his subjects? That's impossible. There's a 6th update tonight. Let's fight. Please support us. Chapter 673. Because of Yixing, Shimen Zhu had suffered a loss at the hands of the Black Tiger King. From then on, he hated Yixing in his heart. No matter how great Yixing's fame was, Shimen Zhu did not feel happy at all. She only felt gloomy and unhappy. Shimen Zhu's words were also his thoughts. He did not want to see Yixing overthrow the Dayuan dynasty. At that time, Yixing would become the most exalted king. The rest of the people in the Dark Star Church would all be Yixing's subjects. Furthermore, the ones who would be in charge of the Dark Star Church would definitely be the Dark Leopard King's people, and not the Shimen clan. Therefore, Shimen Zhu would rather maintain the status quo. As a genius disciple of the Shimen clan, his position in the Dark Star sect was very high. In comparison, if Yixing overthrew the Dayuan dynasty and became the new supreme king, Shimen Zhu might not be as free as he was now. At least, in Shimen Zhu's eyes, Yixing was still a lowly brat. He could not accept that Yixing would become the new supreme king in the future. Although Zhuo Yupeng did not like Yixing, he did not think as much as Shimen Zhu. Now that he heard Shimen Zhu's analysis, a thought suddenly arose in his mind. That's right. If Yixing really overthrew the Dayuan dynasty and became the new supreme king, what would I, Zhuo Yupeng, become? Now, I am the young master of the Dark Star sect. In the future, I will definitely take over the position of the sect leader and control the entire Dark Star sect. In the Dark Star sect, I am high above. No one can compare to me. But if Yi Xing becomes the new Supreme King and the Dark Star sect becomes the ruler of the Starland, will I still be the young master? Will I still have any hope of becoming the sect leader? At that time, the Starland will be controlled by Yi Xing and the Dark Star sect will be controlled by Yi Xing. I, Zhuo Yupeng, will be nothing. I will have to listen to Yi Xing's whims. Zhuo Yupeng felt extremely disgusted by Yi Xing's act of destroying the great Yuan dynasty. Zhuo Yupeng clenched his fist and said, "No! There must never be such a day. The great Yuan dynasty must be overthrown by me, Zhuo Yupeng. The new Supreme King can only be me." Seeing Zhuo Yupeng's performance, Shimen Zhu was delighted. Shimen Zhu raised his palm and placed it on his own neck. "Young cult master, do you want to kill Yi Xing?" Shimen Zhu hated Yi Xing to the core. But now, he, Shimen Zhu, could no longer do anything to Yi Xing. Even if he sought help from his clan, with the Black Biao King's protection, the Shimen clan could do nothing. However, if he could rope in Zhuo Yupeng, Shimen Zhu felt that there was still a chance. Although the Black Tiger King was the strongest expert in the Dark Star Church, the Dark Star Church still belonged to the Zhuo family. The foundation of the Dark Star Church was in the hands of the Zhuo family. In terms of individual strength, the Black Biao King was the strongest. But in terms of strength, the Black Biao King was no match for the Zhuo family. Shimen Zhu did not dare to say those words to the Dark Star Church master. But he was familiar with the young cult master, Zhuo Yupeng. In addition, Zhuo Yupeng did not like Yi Xing. That was why he dared to fan the flames. Zhuo Yupeng frowned slightly. Although he hated Yi Xing, he had never thought of killing Yi Xing. Zhuo Yupeng thought for a while and said, "You know how important Yi Xing is to the left emissary. If we kill Yi Xing, the left emissary will be furious. He might betray the Dark Star Church and cause a split. It is not good for the Dark Star Church. Moreover, Yi Xing is just a lowly brat. Why should we kill him? Won't it dirty our hands? Humph! I will prove to everyone that I, Zhuo Yupeng, am the only person who can overthrow the great Yuan dynasty." Shimen Zhu forced a laugh. He could only hide the killing intent in his heart and said, "Young cult master is so generous. That brat is lucky." Right then, Zhuo Yupeng and Shimen Zhu's communication beads lit up. They both took out their beads and read the information inside. Their eyes were filled with shock. Hiss! Shimen Zhu gasped, "Wei Qingxian has come out. She is only 19 years old, and she has already reached the 4-star realm?" Good, good, good. Zhuo Yupeng praised again and again. She's not even 19 years old, yet she broke through the astral reaching realm and became a venerable. This is already unprecedented. Who would have thought that she would become a 4-star venerable in just 10 short months? Haha, she's even more of a monster than Yi Xing. In my opinion, she's the real star of chaos. Zhuo Yupeng hated Yi Xing. After Yi Xing won the life and death battle, he was like the sun in the sky in the Dark Star sect. Therefore, Zhuo Yupeng was very depressed. Now, he suddenly heard the news that Wei Qingxian had come out of seclusion and had already reached the 4-star realm. Knowing that there was someone even more monstrous than Yi Xing, Zhuo Yupeng's sullen feelings immediately dissipated. More importantly, Zhuo Yupeng didn't hate Wei Qingxian. Not only that, he liked her a lot. Wei Qingxian returned to the Dark Star sect after returning from the Outer Star continent. Zhuo Yupeng saw Wei Qingxian for the first time, and was shocked by Wei Qingxuan's beauty. Zhuo Yupeng was the #1 handsome man in the Dark Star sect, and was also known as the #1 handsome man in the Star continent. He was very confident in his appearance, and had never taken a fancy to a woman. However, Wei Qingxian was an exception. When Zhuo Yupeng saw Wei Qingxian for the first time, he made a decision in his heart. Such a peerless beauty was a match made in heaven with him, Zhuo Yupeng. Unfortunately, after Wei Qingxian returned to the Dark Star sect, she started to cultivate in seclusion. After becoming a venerable, she continued to cultivate in seclusion. Until now, Zhuo Yupeng wanted to get closer to Wei Qingxian, but he never had the chance. Today, Wei Qingxian finally came out of seclusion. This news made Zhuo Yupeng very happy. Moreover, Wei Qingxian was already a 4-star venerable. This made Zhuo Yupeng even happier. Yi Xing, you are a 3-star venerable at the age of 21, and you can even defeat a 7-star venerable. You are indeed monstrous. However, I, Zhuo Yupeng, will have a woman who is even more monstrous than you. A 19-year-old 4-star venerable. Zhuo Yupeng thought in his heart, and his face bloomed with joy. Although Zhuo Yupeng loathed Yi Xing and called Yi Xing a low-born brat, he still felt that Yi Xing was very monstrous and that he couldn't be compared to him. Therefore, when Wei Qingxuan's performance became even more monstrous, and Zhuo Yupeng imagined Wei Qingxian as his woman, Zhuo Yupeng subconsciously felt that he had surpassed Yi Xing. Of course, he was in a good mood. Zhuo Yupeng saw Wei Qingxian as his and thought that with his identity as the young master of the Dark Star sect, it would be easy to get Wei Qingxian. However, he didn't know that Wei Qingxian was already Yi Xing's girlfriend. Shimen Zhu, take your time drinking. I have something to do, so I'll take my leave first. When Zhuo Yupeng received news of Wei Qingxian, he immediately left Shimen Zhu behind and headed for Duke Lanqin's residence. When Zhuo Yupeng arrived at Duke Lanqin's residence, Wei Qingxian and Duke Lanqin were no longer there. Where did Duke Lanqin take her? While Zhuo Yupeng was scratching his head, trying to figure out where Wei Qingxian had gone, Duke Lanqin and Wei Qingxian had already arrived at the left emissary's residence. Complete. I can still push myself a little. I'll continue to beg for monthly votes and continue to work hard tomorrow. Chapter 674. A 4-star venerable at the age of 19. In the left emissary's residence, the Black Tiger King stared at Wei Qingxian in shock. If it weren't for Yi Xing, I would have thought you were the real fiend star of troubled times. After a pause, the Black Tiger King continued, Yi Xing is already 21 years old. With your cultivation speed in the venerable realm, it's hard to predict what level you'll reach in 2 years. In fact, you're even more monstrous than Yi Xing. Could it be that there's not just one fiend star of troubled times, but 2? Beside him, Queen Lanqin said, when I sensed her breakthrough, I was still in disbelief. It wasn't until she came out of seclusion that I saw it with my own eyes that I realized it was the truth. A venerable under the age of 20 is unheard of on the starry continent, let alone a mid-level one. Such monstrous cultivation talent is rare even in mid-level continents. Queen Lanqin's tone was also astonished. Wei Qingxian herself didn't think that a 19-year-old 4-star venerable was anything special. She was the daughter of a venerable and possessed a purple destiny. She could naturally cultivate to become a true god. In this life, her father, Reincarnation Prime, had purposely reincarnated her on the starry continent, an ordinary low-level continent, to temper her. Therefore, her cultivation speed was much slower than in her previous life. Her cultivation speed in her previous life was truly monstrous. She became a martial saint at 10, a perfected person at 11, a venerable at 13, a king at 16, and a quasi-god at 20. In her previous life, she was already a 9-star king at 19. Now, she was only a 4-star venerable. Her cultivation speed was far from the same level. At different heights, one would have different views of things. Compared to a king, Wei Qingxuan's cultivation speed in her previous life was indeed shocking. A 16-year-old king. A 19-year-old 9-star king. How monstrous was that? However, in Reincarnation Prime's eyes, it wasn't good. It wasn't that Wei Qingxuan's cultivation speed wasn't fast enough, but that Wei Qingxuan's achievements in the martial way couldn't satisfy Reincarnation Prime. In her previous life, Wei Qingxuan's cultivation speed slowed after she became a quasi-god. Because of her weak foundation, she encountered great difficulties in the Star Nirvana realm. Although Wei Qingxian had the destiny of true god and would become a true god in the future, there was a huge gap between different true gods. Wei Qingxian couldn't possibly become a top true god. As for the position of supremacy, that was even more hopeless. In the end, Wei Qingxian died before she became a true god. Reincarnation Prime used the great Tao of reincarnation to let her live another life. He didn't nurture her like he did in her previous life. Instead, he let her be born in the most ordinary martial arts family on a low-level continent. Step by step, she advanced on the martial way and built a solid foundation. Although it was slower in the early stages, it was crucial for her later cultivation. Of course, this slow was only relative to Wei Qingxuan's past life. In reality, she had a violet heaven's will and a supreme bloodline. No matter where she was, her cultivation speed would always be faster than others. A 19-year-old 4-star venerable. To other martial artists, this was indeed extremely monstrous and abnormal. However, to Wei Qingxian, this was already a slightly slow cultivation speed. Yi Xing was 2 years older than Wei Qingxian, but he was able to keep pace with Wei Qingxian in terms of martial Wei cultivation. This was a true monstrous talent. Wei Qingxian was destined to stand at the pinnacle of the Star Continent in the future. Not only that, the Star Continent simply couldn't accommodate such a great god like her. Even the middle-grade continents couldn't accommodate her. Sooner or later, she would return to the high-grade continents and stand under the same sky as her father, the reincarnation sovereign. Therefore, destroying the Great Yuan dynasty was an easy task for Wei Qingxian. However, Si Kongyan of the Great Yuan dynasty could deduce that Yi Xing's existence would affect the foundation of the Great Yuan dynasty, but he couldn't deduce that Wei Qingxian was involved. Reincarnation Prime used the Great Way of Reincarnation to descend Wei Qingxian into the Star Continent. Even the other primes didn't know about this method. Compared to Reincarnation Prime, Si Kongyan was nothing. Of course, it was impossible for him to deduce Reincarnation Prime's arrangements. Wei Qingxian changed the topic of her cultivation and said, "Lord Emissary, is Yi Xing here?" Wei Qingxian was brought to the Dark Star sect by Lanqin King and stayed in Lanqin King's elder mansion. Yi Xing was brought to the Dark Star sect by Black Biao King and stayed in Black Biao King's left emissary mansion. Both of them were now part of the Dark Star sect, but they weren't disciples of the Dark Star sect. They were considered geniuses nurtured outside the sect. Black Biao King and Yi Xing were familiar with each other. Of course, he knew about the relationship between Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian. He said, "Brother Yi Xing is in seclusion to break through to the 4th star venerable realm. He should be out in a few days." Wei Qingxian said, "Then I'll stay in the mansion and wait for him. Is that okay?" As Wei Qingxuan's memories awakened more and more, she understood more about her previous life. She didn't care much about the Star Continent anymore. However, Yi Xing was an exception. The two of them had gone through life and death together. They had indelible memories. Moreover, in her previous life, Wei Qingxian grew up under Reincarnation Prime's wings. Her status was high and there were many men who worshipped her like a goddess. However, none of them dared to pursue her. In her 2 lives, Yi Xing was the first and only man who walked into Wei Qingxuan's heart. Naturally, she couldn't forget him. Ever since she broke through to the venerable realm and her memories awakened again, Wei Qingxian thought for a long time and made a decision. She didn't dare to reveal her secret to others, but she felt that she shouldn't do the same to Yi Xing. She should let Yi Xing know the truth. Therefore, after she came out of seclusion, the first thing she did was look for Yi Xing. She had to have a good talk with Yi Xing. She had to tell Yi Xing about her identity and that she would definitely leave the Star Continent in the future. As for their relationship, she had to let Yi Xing know the truth before he made a choice. King Lanqin glanced at Wei Qingxian in surprise. Her elder mansion wasn't far from here. It would take less than half an incense stick to burn to get here. However, Wei Qingxian had chosen to stay here and wait for Yi Xing to come out of seclusion. It was obvious that Yi Xing was very important to her. Black Biao King naturally wouldn't refuse. "Of course. You and brother Yi Xing have a close relationship. You can call me brother Black Biao, just like brother Yi Xing." King Lanqin bid farewell to Black Biao King while Wei Qingxian stayed in the left emissary's mansion to wait for Yi Xing to come out of seclusion. Elder Lanqin. King Lanqin returned to her mansion. Zhua Yupeng was still waiting there. "Young hierarch, why have you come to my mansion?" King Lanqin had already heard the servant's report and knew that Zhua Yupeng was here. She wasn't surprised. "You're finally back. Where's junior sister Qingxian? Didn't she come back with you?" Zhua Yupeng asked in surprise. "Qingxian. She's staying in the left emissary's mansion. Why are you looking for Qingxian?" King Lanqin asked. "Ah. Why is junior sister Qingxian staying in the left emissary's mansion?" Zhua Yupeng ignored King Lanqin's question and asked in surprise. "Yi Xing is in seclusion to become a 4-star venerable. Qingxian is waiting for him to come out." Waiting for him to come out. waiting for him to come out. King Lanqin's voice resounded in Zhuo Yupeng's mind. Zhuo Yupeng's heart instantly shattered. Chapter 675. Left Star Emissary's Mansion. Ever since the first crack appeared on the realm barrier, the second one slowly appeared, and then the third. After 2 days, the cracks on the barrier were already densely packed. The entire barrier was on the verge of collapse, as if it would shatter into pieces in the next moment. Boom! After a few more fierce attacks, Yixing's body finally emitted a sound. The realm barrier was completely destroyed, and a comfortable feeling spread throughout his body. From all directions, countless star power rushed into Yixing's body, forming a huge star power whirlpool, like a funnel. All of a sudden, Yixing's star power exploded. It had undergone a qualitative change, becoming even more powerful. Yixing's cultivation had broken through to the 4th level of the astral reaching realm, becoming a mid-level reverend. With the breakthrough, not only had the star power strengthened, Yixing's perception of the natural yuan qi had also become clearer. Compared to when he was a 3-star reverend, his strength had increased by leaps and bounds. If Yixing were to fight Meng Yuanting again, the fight would not be so difficult and intense. He would be able to kill Meng Yuanting easily. Breaking through to the 4th level of the astral reaching realm was the breakthrough from a low-level reverend to a mid-level reverend. It caused a huge fluctuation of star power. Many experts had sensed this fluctuation, and knew that someone had broken through. In the left Star Emissary's mansion, Black Tiger King and Wei Qingxian naturally sensed it the clearest. He has also broken through to the 4th Star Reverend, the same cultivation as me. I hope he can keep up with my footsteps. Only then will he be able to get father's approval. Wei Qingxian revealed a smile as she thought to herself. A 21-year-old 4-star Reverend. Although he is not as good as Wei Qingxian, other than Wei Qingxian, there is no one like him in the Star Continent. Good, very good. As long as Yixing and Wei Qingxian grow up, the Great Yuan dynasty will cease to exist. Black Tiger King sensed Yixing's breakthrough and was very happy. The Black Biao King and Wei Qingxian both rushed towards Yixing's courtyard. The two of them arrived at the same time and entered the courtyard. Yixing walked out of his room and saw the Black Biao King and Wei Qingxian in the courtyard. Qingxian! Yixing's eyes lit up when he saw Wei Qingxian. The two of them hadn't seen each other for nearly a year and a half since they parted on the Grand Arena. Yixing quickly walked up to the two and greeted the Black Biao King. Brother Black Biao. Yixing. Wei Qingxuan's eyes lit up. She was happy to see Yixing. The Black Biao King slapped a palm onto Yixing's shoulder and said, Good, good. You and Qingxian are both 4-star venerables at such a young age. Haha. You're too monstrous. When you grow up, the end of the Great Yuan dynasty will come. 4-star venerables. Yixing's expression changed as he looked over at Wei Qingxian. When he first saw Wei Qingxian, Yixing was only happy. He didn't notice Yixing's cultivation. Now that he looked carefully, Wei Qingxuan's cultivation aura was indeed at the 4th level of astral reaching realm. She was a true 4-star venerable. Wei Qingxian faintly smiled and said, It was all thanks to those eternity flowers that I was able to reach the 4th level of astral reaching realm so quickly. Yixing nodded. The Ian Extreme Flower was one of the reasons why his cultivation had risen so quickly. When the Black Biao King saw the two of them flirting with each other, his eyes lit up. He chuckled and said, Yixing, I'm relieved to see that your cultivation has reached the 4th level of astral reaching realm. You two haven't seen each other for a long time, so you must have a lot to talk about. I won't disturb you. You two can talk. Then the Black Biao King laughed heartily and left the courtyard. Yixing and Wei Qingxian looked at the Black Biao King's back and exchanged a glance. Their faces reddened, and their heartbeats sped up. Let's talk inside. Yixing was a bit more courageous, and took the initiative to hold Wei Qingxuan's jade-like hand. Wei Qingxian didn't take her hand back. She faintly nodded and walked side by side with Yixing. The two entered the room and sat down. Long time no see. How have you been? Yixing opened with a meaningless greeting. Wei Qingxian had always been in closed-door cultivation. How could she be well? She nodded and said, I'm fine. The two hadn't seen each other for a long time. They seemed to have 1,000 things they wanted to say to each other. However, when they were face to face, they didn't know what to say. The two looked at each other, and all their emotions were reflected in their eyes. Looking at that perfect face, Yixing's heart was moved. His heartbeat suddenly sped up, and a sliver of emotion flashed through his eyes. He tilted his head forward slightly. That sliver of emotion was extremely secretive, but when their eyes met, their senses were extremely sensitive. Wei Qingxian immediately sensed Yixing's feelings. Wei Qingxuan's heartbeat also sped up. She gently bit her lower lip and closed her eyes. This was clearly a response. The joy in Yixing's heart surged with a whoosh. He tilted his head forward slightly and pressed his lips against hers. When their lips met, both of them felt like they had been electrocuted. Their heartbeats were the most intense at this moment, and their breathing became hurried as well. Their lips slowly parted. That wonderful taste was even more pleasurable than a breakthrough in cultivation. Yixing wanted to kiss her again, but Wei Qingxian leaned back to avoid him. Wei Qingxuan's face flushed. She said, "I have something to tell you." Yixing looked at Wei Qingxian with sparkling eyes. He said, "Go on, I'm listening. Be serious." Wei Qingxian pushed Yixing's head to a safe distance. She said, "What I want to tell you is very important. It's about my origins." Yixing restrained his expression. He said, "Origins? Aren't you from the Wei family of Celestial Azure City?" Wei Qingxian rolled her eyes at Yixing. She said, "That's only on the surface. Because of my existence, the Wei family obtained a lot of resources. Even now, they only have one martial saint. Do you think that if I were a disciple of the Wei family, I would be able to become a 4-star venerable now?" Yixing thought carefully and shook his head. Strictly speaking, his identity as a disciple of the Ye family was only on the surface. If he didn't have the superbrain and the black hole astrology, he would be nothing now. It seemed that Wei Qingxian was the same as him. She had her own secrets. Now, Wei Qingxian wanted to share this secret with him. This moved Yixing. He had never mentioned his secret to Wei Qingxian, nor did he plan to mention it to Wei Qingxian. He didn't expect that she would share her secret with him. She would only share her secret with someone who was extremely close to her and trusted her. Yixing was naturally touched. Wei Qingxian said, "You're familiar with the Black Biao King. You should know that the King realm isn't the end, right?" Yixing nodded. He said, "Yes. Above the King realm is the quasi-god. Above the quasi-god is the true god. Above the true god is the legendary honorable." Wei Qingxuan's expression turned serious. She said, "Listen carefully. I am the daughter of a honorable." Yixing was immediately stunned. He stared at Wei Qingxian, dumbfounded. "Honorable? Honorable's daughter?" Chapter 676. Even in the notes left behind by the founder of the Dark Star sect, Supremes were legendary existences. It could be seen that even the Dark Star Temple, a 5-star force on a high-class continent, didn't have any Supremes. Now, Wei Qingxian said in front of Yixing that she was the daughter of a Supremes. How could he not be dumbfounded? He was completely stunned. Wei Qingxian had already expected Yixing's reaction. She repeated word by word, "Yes, I'm the daughter of a Supremes." Yixing was still shocked. How is that possible? Supremes are legendary existences on high-class continents. Why would they leave their daughter in a small place like Celestial City? Wei Qingxian looked at Yixing. "You don't believe what I said?" Yixing nodded. I do. It's just that I'm too surprised." "Why is that?" Wei Qingxian said, "I'm the daughter of a Supremes. Do you still dare to like me? Do you dare to want me?" Yixing was slightly surprised. "Why wouldn't I dare?" Wei Qingxian smiled. She was in a good mood. "All right, since you dare, I'll tell you everything I know." Wei Qingxian spoke, and Yixing listened. After a long time, Wei Qingxian told Yixing all the information about her past life that she had awakened from her memories. Yixing was amazed. It turned out that Wei Qingxian had lived a second life. He had always heard that people couldn't live after death. Afterlife and next life didn't exist. But today, Yixing saw someone who had lived a second life. If there really was a next life, then there really was an afterlife. However, without the memories of the previous life, it couldn't be considered a second life. It was just a new life. Only with the memories of the previous life could it be considered a second life. In this way, Wei Qingxian was living a second life, and so was Yixing. Samsara Supremes let Wei Qingxian live a second life with the great way of reincarnation, and let Wei Qingxian be born in an ordinary warrior family. Unexpectedly, she could still retain her bloodline and astrology. This method was really incredible. After listening to Wei Qingxuan's story, Yixing felt that coming to the Star Continent and living a second life didn't seem so special. Wei Qingxian said, "I've told you everything I know. My father is Reincarnation Supremacy, the master of Reincarnation Palace. Mother and I perished together, sealed in ice by my father, waiting for me to become a martial saint before I can save her life. So, my goal of martial arts is to reach the peak of martial arts and become a Supremes. The Star Continent is just my starting point. One day, I will go back to the Samsara Palace and find my father. Yixing, if you still dare to like me and be with me, then you can't just stay in this small place like the Star Continent. You have to go to a wider world and walk side by side with me on the road of martial arts. If you can't keep up with me, although I don't mind, I'm worried that my father won't approve of you. Since you like me and want me, you have to get my father's approval. So you must work hard." Yixing touched his head and felt a little troubled. It was not easy to get the approval of a Supremes. Even if he didn't become a Supremes, he had to at least become a true god to be qualified to get the approval of a Supremes. But now, Yixing was only a 4-star venerable. Not to mention a true god, even a quasi-god was a very distant existence. Seeing Yixing silent, Wei Qingxian said angrily, "Why are you afraid?" "Afraid?" Yixing immediately shook his head. If he didn't have the black hole astrology, he was indeed worried that he wouldn't be able to keep up with Wei Qingxuan's footsteps in the future. After all, Wei Qingxian had a purple true god's mandate. Yixing's current 9-star king's mandate was heaven-defying in the Star Continent, but in front of a purple destiny, it was nothing. However, Yixing had the black hole astrology and could devour other people's mandates for his own use. What Yixing lacked was a big stage. As long as he had a big enough stage, he was confident that he would be able to obtain a higher level of heavenly fate. He would be able to walk further on the martial path and reach the peak. Yixing grabbed Wei Qingxuan's hands and said seriously, "Don't be afraid. I might not be in your father's eyes now, but one day, I will use my achievements to make him value me and obtain his recognition." Wei Qingxian laughed happily and said, "Okay, I'm worried that you will be scared by my father's supremacy and not dare to prove yourself to him. As long as you are willing to work hard for me and my father's recognition, no matter what your final achievements are, you will always be my man." After saying that, Wei Qingxian took the initiative to lean forward and kissed Yixing on the lips. This time, the two kissed for a few breaths of time before moving away. Their faces were full of joy and excitement. Yixing lifted Wei Qingxuan's face and said, "Actually, I also have a secret to share with you. A descendant of the Ye family is only my identity on the surface." Wei Qingxian confided in Yixing without holding anything back. This completely moved Yixing's heart. He also chose to share his own secret with her. Wei Qingxian was startled and said, "Are you also the son of a supremacy?" Yixing laughed and said, "I am the son of a supremacy of Earth, the son of Earth." Wei Qingxian said in surprise, "Supremacy of Earth? What a strange name." Yixing laughed and said, "Okay, there is no supremacy of Earth. Earth is a planet where no one cultivates martial arts. Everyone is an ordinary mortal, but there is very advanced technology. The technology that can explore the stars and kill kings without a problem." Wei Qingxian showed great interest and said, "Technology? There is actually such a magical thing. How is it possible for a mortal to kill a king? On the Star Continent, it was impossible for a mortal to kill a king. There was no such weapon at all. Moreover, even if a mortal obtained a divine weapon that could kill a king, they would not be able to move it and unleash its power. They would still not be able to kill a king. However, it was different on Earth. Even if a king had the power to destroy mountains, no matter how powerful he was, could he be more powerful than a missile? Even if a king flew into the sky, a missile could still shoot him down. When he first arrived on the Star Continent, Yixing often thought about Earth. However, the more he went, the less he thought about it. In the last 2 years, he had almost sealed Earth in his mind. Now that he talked about it with Wei Qingxian, Yixing felt as if he was talking about the glory of his hometown. Yixing said, "This is only in terms of martial arts. In terms of daily use, there are even more magical things. The communication beads on the star continent can transmit information, but the distance is limited. On Earth, there is also such a tool that can transmit not only sound but also images." Wei Qingxuan's eyes were full of yearning and said, "I really want to go there and see. How can I go to Earth?" Yixing's excited expression immediately cooled down and said, "Sigh. I don't know what happened, but I came to the star continent and can't go back." Chapter 677. In the following days, Wei Qingxian started to live in the Left Star Emissary Mansion, in the same courtyard as Yixing. Of course, the two lived in different rooms. Although the two had confirmed their relationship, they knew that it was not the right time for them to live together. Other than sleeping, when the two of them were in different rooms, every day, the two of them would pair up and cultivate together. When Yixing was cultivating his archery skills, Wei Qingxian would be cultivating martial arts on the side. While cultivating, the two would also exchange their experiences. They were very happy and had a lot of fun. The news of Wei Qingxian becoming a 4-star venerable had already spread throughout the Dark Star sect. And the news of Yixing breaking through and coming out of seclusion had also spread throughout the Dark Star sect. All of a sudden, Yixing and Wei Qingxian became the two most famous people in the Dark Star sect. The two were always together. Moreover, Wei Qingxian had moved into the Left Star Emissary Mansion for Yixing. All the martial artists in the Dark Star sect knew that the two were a couple. The two's cultivation speed was extremely monstrous. Naturally, the news of them being together had become a legend. Of course, not everyone thought that it was a legend. For example, Zhuo Yupeng. Zhuo Yupeng had fantasized about pursuing Wei Qingxian and making Wei Qingxian his woman. Only then would he feel proud in front of Yixing. However, Wei Qingxian had already become a couple with Yixing. This shattered Zhuo Yupeng's fantasy before it could become a reality. Regarding Yixing and Wei Qingxian being together, Zhuo Yupeng only felt jealousy and heartbreak. However, Zhuo Yupeng's jealousy and heartbreak were useless. Yixing and Wei Qingxian were still together, and the story spread throughout the Dark Star sect. Time flew by quickly. In the blink of an eye, it was already August. After 5 months of cultivation, Yixing and Wei Qingxuan's cultivation bases had both stabilized to peak level 4 astral reaching realm. On this day, He Biao Wang happily found Yixing and Wei Qingxian, and said, "Let me tell you guys a piece of good news." The Black Biao King smiled mysteriously and excitedly. Yixing asked in surprise, "What good news is it? Why are you so happy?" Black Biao King said, "Our sect has a treasure land that is connected to the dimensional void. Every few decades or centuries, a huge amount of pure star power would pour out from the dimensional void, which is extremely beneficial for astral-reaching realm warriors. Back then, the founder of the sect had established the Dark Star sect here precisely because of this treasure land. This treasure land is called the Cultivation Saint Pond." Yixing and Wei Qingxian looked at each other and said, "What does it have to do with us? Could it be that we can enter the Cultivation Saint Pond to cultivate?" The Black Tiger King nodded with a smile. "That's right. In order to maintain the effects of cultivation, only 10 people can enter the Cultivation Saint Pond every time the power of the stars surges out from Origin Void. These 10 people have always been the 10 strongest venerables of the younger generation. After some discussion, you and Qingxian can both enter the Cultivation Saint Pond." Yixing and Wei Qingxuan's eyes brightened. They had already reached the peak of 4-star realm, but breaking through to 5-star realm was still very difficult. It would take a lot of time. If he could enter the Cultivation Saint Pond to cultivate, then breaking through to the 5-star venerable realm would not be difficult. If the effects of the Cultivation Saint Pond were good, then he could even consolidate a lot of his cultivation after breaking through to the 5-star venerable realm. Yixing said, "When can we enter the Cultivation Saint Pond?" Black Biao King said, "Soon. The star power gushing out from the dimensional void will merge with the water of the Cultivation Saint Pond. It won't take more than a few days." Prepare yourselves. I'll call you when it's time. Although the cultivation's sacred pond was a treasured place, there were too few times when one could cultivate. The shortest time was a few decades, and the longest time was 100 years. A large amount of star force would only appear once in the dimensional void. Therefore, the majority of the disciples of the Dark Star sect would not encounter the opening of the Cultivation Saint Pond when they were in the golden stage of cultivation. Encountering the opening of the Cultivation Saint Pond during the golden stage of cultivation was a great fortune that could only be encountered by chance. This time, not only Yixing and Wei Qingxian, but also 8 other venerables of the younger generation of the Dark Star sect were lucky this time. The golden stage of cultivation for venerables was under the age of 35. As a 5-star power, the Dark Star sect had a lot of people. There were many venerables of the younger generation, and the ones ranked at the top were not weak. Among them, the one with the highest cultivation was an 8-star venerable lord. He was a disciple of the Zhua family, and his name was Zhua Yuandong. He was already 34 years old. If he had delayed for another year, this great fortune would have nothing to do with him. It had to be said that he was very lucky. Next, there were 2 7-star venerables. They were disciples of the Zhua family and the Ximen family. The Zhua family's young master, Zhua Yupeng, was 31 years old. The Ximen family's Ximen Song was 34 years old. Also, there were 5 6-star venerables. One from the Zhua family, one from the Ximen family, one from the Lin family, one from the He family, and one from the Lan family. They were all over 30 years old. As for 5-star venerables, there were naturally some as well. However, there were only 10 spots. Although Yixing and Wei Qingxian were only 4-star venerables, they were too young. One was 21 years old, and the other was 19 years old. Under the Black Biao King's nomination, the upper echelons of the Dark Star sect agreed to include Yixing and Wei Qingxian in the 10 spots. Therefore, with the addition of an 8-star venerable lord, 2 7-star venerables, and 5 6-star venerables, the 10 spots were filled. Regarding this, some of the younger 5-star venerables were dissatisfied. For example, Ximen Zhu was a 5-star venerable. He was a disciple of the Ximen family. If there were 2 spots among the 5-star venerables, he should be 1. However, it was useless even if some people were dissatisfied. This matter had already been approved by the upper echelons of the Dark Star sect, and no one could change it. 5 days later, the Black Biao King found Yixing and Wei Qingxian again. He said, "The astral energy in the void dimension has stopped. It's time for the Cultivation Saint Pool to open. Follow me." Yixing and Wei Qingxian followed behind the Black Biao King. Not long after, they arrived at a valley between 2 mountain ridges. Some of the upper echelons of the Dark Star sect had already gathered here, as well as some of the younger generation venerables. Although they had stayed in the Dark Star sect for 5 months, Yixing and Wei Qingxian had basically been cultivating in the left emissary's residence. Even when they were cultivating their archery skills, they were only at the back mountain of the residence. Therefore, Yixing and Wei Qingxian did not know many of the younger generation venerables. However, there was no one among the younger generation venerables who did not know Yixing and Wei Qingxian. When Yixing sized up the younger generation venerables, he immediately felt a sharp gaze shooting towards him. Yixing met this gaze. It was the gaze of the young sect master, Zhua Yupeng. Zhua Yupeng's gaze was extremely aggressive. Yixing could feel that Zhua Yupeng did not like him. This guy can't be holding a grudge against me because of the Dark Star Pagoda, right? That would be too petty. Yixing thought to himself. Today's monthly votes are very poor. I will continue to write the 5th and 6th chapters. Brothers, I beg for monthly votes. I beg for passion. Chapter 678. Not long after, another elder came over with 2 young venerables. Now, all 10 of them were present. The valley ahead was enveloped by a formation. The Dark Star sect's leader walked to the entrance of the formation and said, "The Cultivation Sacred Pond is located in the depths of the valley ahead. The spring water in the Cultivation Sacred Pond already contains a large amount of astral power. You can directly absorb it from the sacred pond to improve your cultivation. The Cultivation Sacred Pond is divided into 10 regions. The 10 of you will each have a region. The area of each region is the same, and there is no difference in size. Once you enter, you are not allowed to fight for a spot. Do you hear me? Yixing and the others nodded at the same time. We hear you. The Dark Star sect's leader stepped aside and said, Go in. I wish you all a breakthrough in your cultivation. The entrance of the formation opened, and Yixing and the others entered the valley in a single file. After entering the formation, everyone's vision became clear. They immediately saw the Cultivation's sacred pond in the depths of the valley. Although it was called a pond, it was not small. It was close to 50 meters in radius. It was practically a small lake. There were stone walls in the Cultivation's sacred pond, dividing the entire pond into 10 fan-shaped regions. There were 10 people who entered, so there was a total of 10 regions. There was nothing to fight for. Each person could have a region. Yixing and Wei Qingxian chose 2 adjacent regions and sat down beside the Cultivation's sacred pond. Soon, the 10 of them chose their own regions. Zhuo Yupeng's blade-like gaze was cast over again. Yixing looked to the right and saw Zhuo Yupeng staring at him coldly from more than 10 meters away. Are you crazy? Yixing thought to himself as he glared at him fiercely. The smell of gunpowder between the two of them immediately grew stronger. When their gazes collided, there was a feeling of electricity in the air. Zhuo Yupeng snorted softly and revealed a contemptuous smile before retracting his gaze. Since the other party did not take the initiative to provoke him, Yixing naturally could not be bothered to lower himself to his level. He also retracted his gaze, restrained his distracting thoughts, and calmed his mind. Soon, everyone began to circulate their cultivation techniques to absorb the energy. The power of the stars surging from the dimensional void was affected by the formation and had nowhere to spread. Instead, it merged into the spring water of the Cultivation Saint Pond, causing the spring water to be like a spiritual spring. Martial artists could directly extract the power of the stars from the spring water. If Yixing used the black hole astral form to devour the power of the stars, it would cause too much of a commotion and the devouring range would be too wide, affecting others. Therefore, Yixing only used the falling star art. After becoming a 4-star venerate, Yixing changed the 7th level of the profound rank low-grade falling star art to the 3rd level of the profound rank mid-grade falling star art. Then, he cultivated it to the 4th level. The speed at which he absorbed the power of the stars was extremely fast, comparable to that of a 7-star venerate. However, Yixing's absorption speed was not as fast as Wei Qingxian and Zhuo Yupeng's. Wei Qingxuan's cultivation technique was the divine grade minor reincarnation art. Although it was only a profound grade minor reincarnation art, it was still a divine grade minor reincarnation art. Yixing's falling star art was only a profound grade minor reincarnation art. Whether it was the strength of the stars or the speed at which they absorbed the power of the stars, Wei Qingxian was faster. As for Zhuo Yupeng, he was a 7-star venerate. Furthermore, he had cultivated his profound grade mid-grade minor reincarnation art to the 6th level, which was better than many 8-star venerates. Of course, his absorption speed was faster than Yixing's profound grade mid-grade falling star art's 4th level. At the beginning of the absorption, everyone was fine. Yixing could feel that the power of the stars he absorbed from the spring water was extremely pure. It was very effective in raising his cultivation. He felt very comfortable. Yixing judged that absorbing the power of the stars in the spring water would be more than enough for him to break through to the 5-star venerate realm. He was overjoyed. Time passed slowly. After an hour, the fluctuation of a breakthrough came from the left. Wei Qingxuan's minor reincarnation art was indeed domineering. In just an hour, she had absorbed nearly half of the power of the stars in the spring water. She was the first to break through to the 5-star venerate realm. In terms of cultivation speed, Wei Qingxian was actually faster than Yixing. In 5 months, both of them had consolidated their cultivation to the peak of the 4th level. However, Wei Qingxian was closer to the 5-star venerate realm. Now, Wei Qingxuan's speed of absorbing the spring water in the Saint Pond was faster than Yixing's. Of course, she had broken through to the 5-star venerate realm earlier than Yixing. When Wei Qingxian broke through, everyone sensed the fluctuation of the star power. They looked at Wei Qingxian with envy. However, now that everyone was absorbing the power of the stars in the Cultivation Saint Spring, the mist above the spring covered the entire Cultivation Saint Spring. It was a vast expanse of white, but no one could see each other. They could only judge that Wei Qingxian had made a breakthrough based on the position of the fluctuations of the stars. 4 astral-reaching realm warriors, it would be extremely difficult for them to increase their cultivation. Although the Cultivation Saint Spring contained a lot of star power, not everyone who entered the Cultivation Saint Spring would be able to make a breakthrough. After all, different cultivation levels would require different amounts of star power, and the difficulty of making a breakthrough would be different as well. About a quarter of an hour later, another surge of astral power showed up, indicating a breakthrough. The gazes of all the martial artists turned towards Yi Xing's location. Although they couldn't see his figure, they knew that he had also broken through to the 5th level of the astral-reaching realm, becoming a 5-star venerable. Yi Xing felt a sense of comfort coming from his soul. His astral energy was strengthened once more, and there was a qualitative improvement. His strength had also increased by quite a bit. Yi Xing had only absorbed half of the star power in the pond. It seemed that after absorbing the remaining half, his cultivation would be able to consolidate to the late stage of the 5-star venerate realm. Breaking through to the 5-star venerate realm was Yi Xing's goal. Now that he had accomplished it, he could consolidate his cultivation. Yi Xing was very satisfied with this trip to the Saint Pond, and the corner of his mouth raised into a smile. Time continued to pass, and Yi Xing continued to absorb the star power to consolidate his cultivation. Soon, another fluctuation of star power appeared. This fluctuation was extremely intense. Someone had broken through to the 7-star venerate realm. It was a breakthrough from the mid-stage to the high stage. Yi Xing sensed the location of the astral power fluctuation, and knew that it was He Gang who had become a 7-star High Lord. He was the most outstanding descendant of the He family. Being able to break through to the 7-star venerate realm so quickly showed that He Gang's cultivation had already reached the limit of the 6-star venerate realm. Therefore, he was one step ahead of the others. Feeling the others' cultivation breakthroughs one after another, Zhuo Yupeng was very gloomy. He wanted to use the opportunity of the Saint Pond to break through to the 8-star venerate realm in one go. However, his cultivation was originally at the late stage of the 7-star venerate realm, which was too far from the 8-star venerate realm. Now he had almost absorbed all the star power in this area, but only managed to consolidate his cultivation to the peak of the 7-star venerate realm. He was still a little bit away from becoming an 8th-star supremacy. Furthermore, according to Zhuo Yupeng's estimation, he would need a large amount of star energy to break through to the 8th-star supremacy realm. The star energy in the region before him was probably not enough for him to break through. It's already early in the morning, but even if I stay up late, I will still finish the 6th update. Please vote. Chapter 679. Zhuo Yupeng's eyes flashed with rage when he realized he could not break through to the 8th-star supremacy level. Zhuo Yupeng looked at Yi Xing's pool. Yi Xing's absorption speed was much slower than Zhuo Yupeng's. Zhuo Yupeng had almost finished absorbing all the star power in his area, while Yi Xing had only absorbed about 60% of it. Zhuo Yupeng hated Yi Xing to begin with. Now, when he thought about how he wouldn't be able to break through to the 8th-star Exalt Lord realm with the power of the stars in his territory, the hatred and brutality in his heart erupted at the same time. He might as well go all the way. He would snatch Yi Xing's astral energy and become an 8th-star supremacy. In the golden stage of cultivation, the earlier one broke through to the next level, the more potential he had. This opportunity was not to be missed. Zhuo Yupeng's mind was like a demon that could not be stopped. Whoosh! Zhuo Yupeng's astral energy was activated. He grabbed at the air, and a big astral hand reached out and grabbed a large amount of star power in front of Yi Xing. Yi Xing furrowed his brows. Someone was trying to snatch away the power of stars that belonged to him? Yi Xing did not have much time to think. Zhuo Yupeng had already reached out a second astral hand. Humph! Yi Xing snorted and punched out. The fist aura rushed forward. Bang! The fist aura hit the astral hand, and there was a loud explosion. Yi Xing's punch was not as strong as Zhuo Yupeng's astral hand. The fist aura was shattered, but the astral hand only shook. However, the astral hand shook, and the star power that the astral hand had grabbed fell. Yi Xing knew it was Zhuo Yupeng who had grabbed the astral hand. He was about to scold him when a strong wind blew. Boom! Zhuo Yupeng's second attempt at grabbing the power of stars had been dispersed by Yi Xing. Zhuo Yupeng was furious. His next attack was not to grab the power of stars in the pool. Instead, it was aimed directly at Yi Xing. Zhuo Yupeng not only wanted to snatch Yi Xing's star power, but he also wanted to hit him. This infuriated Yi Xing. 9 Heavens Astral Travel Technique. Yi Xing's figure flashed like a stream of light, and the palm landed on the ground. The entire valley shook, and the pool water surged. The rest of the martial artists were all shocked. If it were not for the fact that the Cultivation Saint Pond was made of special stones and was reinforced by formations, Zhuo Yupeng's palm strike probably would have created a deep pit and destroyed the pond. Whoosh! Starlight soared into the sky, turning into a flaming star. The horrifying power instantly evaporated the water above the Cultivation Saint Pond, opening up the vision of all the cultivators. Yi Xing had the fire star above his head. Fire origin energy gathered around his body, making him seem like a messenger of fire. He angrily shouted, "Zhuo Yupeng, are you looking for a beating?" Zhuo Yupeng stood up, his demeanor elegant. He said, "Yi Xing, your greed is insatiable. Isn't the star power in your own area enough for you to absorb? You even secretly absorbed my star power. How dare you? The one I want to hit is you." Zhuo Yupeng calmed down. He knew that he was in the wrong for snatching Yi Xing's star power. So, he took the initiative to throw a bucket of shit at Yi Xing's head. Just when Yi Xing was about to explode with anger, Zhuo Yupeng made things up out of nothing and wronged him first. This made Yi Xing even angrier. Yi Xing angrily shouted, "Bullshit! Not only did you steal my star power, you even hit me when I tried to stop you. Don't think you're amazing just because you're a 7-star venerable lord. In my eyes, you're just a fart. I can suppress you any time." If it was any other time, Yi Xing would not have said such words. However, Yi Xing was indeed furious. Someone had snatched your things and even hit you. Even a clay bodhisattva's anger was about to be ignited. Zhuo Yupeng sneered. "Yi Xing, I know you're the fiend star of chaos. You're strong, but don't be too arrogant. In the Dark Star sect, I, Zhuo Yupeng, am the young sect master. The person who will take over the position of sect master in the future will also be me. Others might take you seriously, but I, Zhuo Yupeng, don't care about you at all. You snatched my astral energy, and you even dare to say that you can suppress me? Come. Do you think I, Zhuo Yupeng, am like those trash from the Grand Yuan dynasty? Do you think I can't beat a lowly brat like you?" The others looked at Yi Xing and Zhuo Yupeng in surprise. Each of them had their own area, so they were surprised and puzzled that they could quarrel over such a small area. Just now, the white mist had shrouded the entire Cultivation Saint Pond. Everyone had been wholeheartedly absorbing the power of the stars to cultivate. Zhuo Yupeng didn't try to grab their power of stars, so of course they didn't sense it. So now, the two people arguing were accusing each other of stealing their star power. It was as if a battle was about to erupt. This caused the other cultivators to look at each other in dismay. They didn't know who was right and who was wrong. However, there were differences between people. The other two venerables of the Zhuo family naturally believed Zhuo Yupeng's words. Their gazes at Yi Xing were burning with fury. "I believe in Yi Xing. He won't steal from others." Wei Qingxian directly expressed her opinion. Of course, she believed in Yi Xing and didn't believe in Zhuo Yupeng. He Gang, who had just become a 7-star venerable lord, was a disciple of the He family. Because of the Black Biao King, he naturally stood on Yi Xing's side. He Gang stood up and walked over to Yi Xing's side. He said, "I also believe in Yi Xing. I believe in the young sect master. I also believe in the young sect master." The two venerables of the Ximen family fell silent. The two venerables of the Zhuo family also walked over to Zhuo Yupeng's side. The current situation had changed. Two venerables stood on Yi Xing's side, for on Zhuo Yupeng's side. The remaining venerables of the Lin family and Lan family looked at each other in dismay. They didn't know who was right and who was wrong. They didn't know which side to stand on. Those standing on Yi Xing's side were Wei Qingxian, a 5-star venerable lord, and He Gang, a 7-star venerable lord. As for those standing on Zhuo Yupeng's side, Zhuo Yuandong was an 8-star venerable lord. Ximen Song was a 7-star venerable lord, and the other two were 6-star venerables. Although Yi Xing was furious, he quickly calmed down and thought about it. No one had seen what had happened just now. Even if they caused a ruckus, they wouldn't be able to do anything to Zhuo Yupeng since they didn't have any evidence. Moreover, Zhuo Yupeng was the young sect master. The Zhuo family was the strongest in the Dark Star sect. Most likely, the Zhuo family would trust Zhuo Yupeng more than Yi Xing. Thus, there was no point in causing a ruckus. Although Yi Xing was infuriated, there was nothing he could do unless he beat Zhuo Yupeng up. But looking at the current situation, if they were to fight, it would probably be a group battle. Yi Xing took a deep breath. He thought to himself, I'll just treat it as stepping on dog shit. I'll just endure it. Don't tell me that if I'm unhappy after stepping on dog shit, I'll step on it again? I'll just endure it. Yi Xing coldly looked at Zhuo Yupeng and said, let's forget about what happened just now. I can't be bothered to lower myself to the level of a scum like you. However, there won't be a next time. If there is a next time, I won't give face to anyone, let alone you, the young sect master. I will only use my fist to greet you. It's 6 chapters again. I only need the second and last chapters on the 8th of September to make up for it. After that, I will add the monthly votes for the month of July. I want to maintain this quality and maintain 6 chapters a day. However, I need strength. Brothers, please give me a monthly vote. Thank you. You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.